A simple yet life-altering command hangs in the air, its weight undeniable and its implications severe. Seymour Hayworth Somerset, a man of refined stature, can only respond with utter disbelief. An uncomfortable silence stretches across the opulent room, the vast distance between them highlighting the profound emotional chasm that separates their opposing wills and expectations. He adjusts his glasses, carefully choosing his words as he struggles to comprehend the absurd request. He addresses his mother-in-law, Dowager Lady Hayworth, an imposing matriarch who holds her cane with an air of absolute authority and unwavering, steely resolve. She questions his comprehension with a condescending tone, her expression showing clear annoyance at his hesitation. With a sigh of impatience, she decides to spell it out for him, leaving no room for misunderstanding. She then reveals the subject of their discussion: a small, innocent-looking girl sitting quietly on the sofa, her sweet demeanor a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere. The girl looks up with wide, vibrant green eyes that sparkle with a hint of hopeful anticipation, seemingly unaware of the monumental decision being made about her fate. The suddenness of the declaration finally breaks Seymour's composure, prompting him to demand an immediate explanation. He internally fumes at the sight before him, a stubborn old woman and a tiny girl, forming the most bizarre and unwelcome combination he could possibly imagine. He considers how much she acts like his own mother, bitterly wishing the lonely estate had a new pet instead. He suggests a cat would have been a better choice, which only earns him a sharp rebuke for talking back. The dowager accuses him of finding her amusing, while the little girl silently panics, believing the world is too dangerous. She cuts him deep with a personal jab, pointing out that despite his busy schedule, he frequently visits Rose's grave. He questions why she would bring up his late wife, but she coldly asserts her right to speak of her own daughter. An entire year has passed, a year since the horrific accident that left behind nothing but a shattered wheelchair, dark memories, and the chilling stain of blood that forever marked the tragedy. His mother-in-law's voice cuts through his dark thoughts, questioning how much longer he plans to live in his state of suspended grief, haunted by the past. He scoffs internally at the thought of it being only 1 year, as every single day has felt like an eternity in hell. He concedes that his mother-in-law is right. It has been a year since his wife Rose died in a carriage accident, but the pain remains fresh and raw. The memory of the wreckage feels as vivid as if it happened yesterday, a nightmare he can never escape, for it was the day he lost his entire family. Inside that doomed carriage were the people he cherished most: his only brother, Graham, with his wife, and his own beloved wife, whom he loved more than life itself. After they were gone, all that remained for him was the crushing weight of a title he never wanted: Duke of Somerset, a responsibility that should have been his brother's. A quiet sob echoed then. He turned towards the sound. The accident also left behind his brother's only son, a young boy now orphaned and alone in the world, clutching flowers as tears streamed down his face. For his nephew, who had just turned 12, the grand title of Duke of Somerset was a burden far too heavy for a child's shoulders to possibly bear, and so, to protect the boy, he stepped up to become the Duke of Somerset himself. The dowager's sharp voice pulls him from his reverie, her gaze piercing as she asks if he thinks she's ignorant. She scolds him for his self-destructive behavior, living like he's on death row with little sleep, while clinging to alcohol and cigarettes as his work piles up. He dismisses her concerns as simply his way of life, but she retorts it's a clear path to an early grave. She reminds him of his solemn duty, the responsibility he carries to protect the entire Somerset estate. His purpose, she states, is to protect the title so he can one day return it to his nephew without shame. She warns that if he shows even a moment of weakness or falters in his duties, their greedy relatives will immediately bare their fangs to seize the ducal seat, and she's tired of hearing that same excuse. He shouts back that it's true, explaining that the moment he tries to pass the title, everyone will attack the child's bloodline. The terrible secret is finally revealed with gut-wrenching finality. The boy, Dante Graham, is not his biological son, which makes his position incredibly precarious and vulnerable. She reminds him of his own origins, stating that he entered the Hayworth family as a son-in-law. He acknowledges this, adding that, even now, his name still carries the Hayworth surname, tying him to her family. He laments taking the title of Duke, which rightfully belonged to the Graham family, effectively turning Dante, the true heir, into an outsider with no inheritance. Therefore, to prevent the other greedy Graham relatives from interfering, when he eventually passes the title to his nephew, he must find a way to secure the boy's claim. Slamming her cane down, the Dowager declares that she understands his intentions and agrees that the situation will indeed become a great problem if left unresolved. She then poses a surprisingly simple question, asking if there isn't an easy way to resolve the bloodline issue that worries him so much. Seymour argues Dante can't be adopted into the Hayworth family as he's the direct heir of the Grahams, but the Dowager counters, revealing her plan isn't adoption, but marriage. He's left completely speechless. The Dowager lays out her audacious plan. He will sponsor this child, and when she grows up, he will marry her to his nephew and then pass on the title. His stunned gaze falls upon the little girl, the key to his mother-in-law's entire scheme. The child looks up at him with a bright, innocent smile, sweetly asking for his answer to the life-changing proposal. With the girl sitting beside her, the Dowager smugly presents her idea as a perfect, flawless solution to all of their complicated political and familial problems. Stammering in disbelief, Seymour immediately dismisses the plan as completely absurd and questions his mother-in-law's sanity. Slumping onto the sofa in frustration, he incredulously asks if she expects him to raise a child for a trivial reason. He demands to know the child's origins as her large, innocent green eye, full of a quiet, unspoken history, simply blinks in response to his pointed question. The little girl calmly and directly answers his question, stating that she is from the Townsend orphanage. She continues her introduction by stating that she has just turned 10 this year, a simple fact that catches him slightly off guard. With a bright and disarmingly cheerful smile that lights up her entire face, she proudly introduces herself to the stern Duke as Lowena Wheatfield, her optimism completely unfazed. The Dowager smirks, explaining to Seymour that the little girl herself had told her she wanted to become part of the family. Completely taken aback by this revelation, Seymour points a trembling finger at her, his voice filled with outrage and disbelief. He finally explodes, accusing her of bringing the child for such an absurd reason and claiming she's clearly after the family's wealth, but the Dowager simply asks why not. Lowena suddenly shouts, denying his accusation. She firmly states she isn't interested in the Hayworths, the Grahams, or the Somerset title, directly confronting their suspicions. To prove her sincerity and dispel any lingering doubts about her motives, she even offers to sign a formal contract. The contract would legally state she won't claim any rights over the family or its title, an offer that clearly startles him. His curiosity piqued, he asks the crucial question, if not for status or wealth, why does she want to join his family? Lowena looks up at the imposing Duke and gives her simple, earnest answer. She just wants a family. She gently reminds him that, as an orphan, she has no one, a truth that visibly resonates with the lonely Duke. Her eyes shining with hope, she begins to paint a picture of a warm home, promising she will always run to the front door to greet him when he returns. She excitedly promises they'll eat breakfast together, even offering to drizzle sauce in a heart shape on his fried eggs. And then, in a bold and unexpected move, she climbs onto the sofa and plops herself right onto his lap. Now comfortably seated on his knee, she looks back at him with a mischievous and confident smile, awaiting his final decision. He insists he's being very serious, his hand tightening on his sleeve as he grapples with the unexpected situation. As a final charming incentive, she whispers that she will even give him a goodnight kiss before bed. To demonstrate, she leans in and plants a small kiss on his cheek, then looks at him with bright, expectant eyes, asking what he thinks of her offer. The Dowager watches the scene unfold, a knowing smile on her lips as she addresses the stunned Duke. In the quiet, sunlit room, the little girl makes her final, heartfelt plea, assuring him they can become a good family together. And that's where this chapter ends. Our story now focuses on Lowena Wheatfield, a young girl whose simple request to join a family has set in motion a series of truly life-altering events. Having just turned 10, she was an ordinary girl from the Townsend orphanage, with even her name being one of the most common among the other children there. Aside from being slightly luckier than the other children, there was nothing special she could boast about, as she easily found a 4-leaf clover in the grass. She gasps in delight at her discovery, holding the tiny 4-leaf clover up as a testament to her unusual good fortune. The other children from the orphanage gather around her, amazed that she has once again found another lucky 4-leaf clover. Holding the small plant gently in her hands, she smiles to herself, reaffirming her own belief that she really is lucky, as this is the 7th one she's found. But her luck wasn't just a simple coincidence. She had been hiding a massive secret, one that explained everything about her. She was reincarnated as a character from a book. The title of that novel was I'm Trying to Be a Family to the Dark Duke, and she was now living inside its very pages as a minor character. The story of how she met the Duke began a few days ago, on Thanksgiving, when the Townsend Orphanage held its yearly group birthday party for children with unknown birthdays. As she leaned forward to blow out the single candle on the cake, she prepared to make a wish. She reflects that perhaps she blew out the birthday candles a little too hard that day, not realizing the wish she made would have such a dramatic consequence. Because in the next moment, she suddenly felt overwhelmingly dizzy and collapsed right in the middle of the party. She fell to the floor unconscious. The other children cried out in alarm as Lowena collapsed, her last thought being that her luck had finally run out on the worst day imaginable, her own birthday. After being sick for 3 agonizing days and nights, she finally woke up to a doctor's grim diagnosis. The doctor delivered the devastating news. There was no cure for her disease, and at most, she only had about 5 years left to live. A truly cruel fate. She had just received a terminal diagnosis, and her first thought was one of disbelief, wondering if the old man had gone senile to say something so pitiful. The reality crashed down on her. She was only 10, meaning she would die at just 15 years old. A wave of injustice washed over her as she recalled her simple acts of kindness, like always giving one of her lucky clovers to her grandpa whenever she found 2. She felt the unfairness from her teacher as well, who just accepted her fate so easily after sharing a boiled egg with her, making her feel her kindness was pointless. Even in the dream she had while unconscious, she remembered her past life as an utterly ordinary student, who liked cute things, delicious food, and reading novels. She was just an ordinary girl who searched for fun novels, but her life was cut short when she was tragically hit by a truck, dying an early and completely ordinary death. Just an ordinary girl whose life ended in an instant, her phone screen shattering on the last page she was reading, chapter 146 of a novel titled Until the Lilies Wither. Even now, the sensations and memories of that moment are vivid. She even remembers what she was reading. It was a novel about a terminally ill heroine just like her, who suffered from a disease called Lily disease. A chilling realization dawns as the doctor diagnoses her with the very same illness. The doctor explains that after the fever subsides, there are no other symptoms. But white blotches bloom across the body until it rots away, eventually killing the victim. On the day she received her terminal diagnosis, she realized it wasn't just a dream she had experienced. She had been reincarnated into the book she read in her previous life, and worse, as a nameless extra. She despaired at her fate, questioning why she had to be an extra and an orphan with an incurable disease. Still, amidst all this misfortune, there was one fortunate thing that gave her a glimmer of hope. She knew what the cure for this terrible disease was. Lily disease is a one-of-a-kind illness that exists only within the world of Until the Lilies Wither, the classic reverse harem story she read in her previous life. The novel's plot revolved around a beautiful, terminally ill heroine who suffers among several obsessive and dangerous male leads, each one drawn to her tragic and delicate beauty. In the story, the heroine, who had the same Lily disease, set out to find a cure and accidentally encountered Seymour, a male lead candidate, thus beginning her ordeal. The reason meeting a male lead led to suffering was because Seymour, one of the candidates, was a villain who became obsessed with the heroine due to her resemblance to his deceased wife. However, despite his villainous nature, he did eventually bring back the cure for Lily disease for the woman he loved. The problem is that the cure for the disease only appears at the very start of the original story, which is a full 7 years from now, by which time she'd be dead. Realizing this can't go on, she becomes fiercely determined, refusing to die meaninglessly like she did in her past life. But a new problem immediately presents itself. As a poor orphan, how is she supposed to meet the powerful Duke Seymour? Seymour isn't just any noble, he's a powerful duke and the story's villain, while she's just a child from an orphanage, so she desperately needs a plan. A bell chimes loudly. Another girl from the orphanage bursts in, asking if Lowina is ready for something important. The friend chides her, assuming she's still sick, and reminds her about volunteering at their benefactor's mansion. She urges Lowina to get ready quickly, adding that they'll be meeting Dowager Lady Hayworth today. The name Hayworth strikes a chord with Lowina, sounding incredibly familiar for a reason she can't quite place. Then, it hits her. She remembers from the novel. Dowager Lady Hayworth is Seymour's mother-in-law, the only person who could handle him, giving her a perfect route to the Duke. Dowager Lady Hayworth was the sole wife of the late Marquis, and the undisputed power holder of the entire Hayworth family, a truly formidable and influential figure. Ever since losing her only daughter, Rose Hayworth, she carried a dark and eccentric air, making her an object of terror to the children at the orphanage she sponsored. Lowena remembered another key detail from the novel. The Dowager was an extreme perfectionist in all things, and her son-in-law was none other than Seymour Graham, the second son of the Graham family and the current Duke of Somerset, connecting all the pieces for Lowena. He entered the Hayworth family as a live-in son-in-law from a young age, officially becoming Seymour Hayworth. Then one day, after an unexpected accident, he inherited the Somerset dukedom, becoming both the Hayworth son-in-law and the Duke, effectively making him head of two families. Though his marriage to Rose was political, he loved her more than anyone, making the Dowager not just his mother-in-law, but also the only person who shared his profound grief. And that very same Dowager, Lady Hayworth, was a sponsor of her orphanage, giving her a perfect opportunity. Of course, she knew meeting the Dowager Lady didn't guarantee she would also get to meet Seymour himself. But then again, she had always been lucky, from finding four-leaf clovers to remembering her past life. Filled with renewed determination, she straightens her bow and decides to go, ready to seize her chance. She's going to save her own life. A few hours later, she faced the Dowager, but her initial confidence began to waver under the woman's imposing presence. Her eyes widen with a sudden, unsettling realization. Something about this situation feels terribly and unexpectedly off. Lowena looks up at the Dowager, her cheeks flushing with anxiety as she nervously adjusts her bow, feeling completely scrutinized under the woman's cold and unyielding gaze. A dreadful feeling washes over her. With the Dowager's intense scrutiny, it feels like she won't even get a chance. And that's where this chapter ends, with Lowena's plan facing its first and perhaps most formidable obstacle. She tempers her excitement with a dose of reality, acknowledging that just meeting the Dowager doesn't guarantee an introduction to Seymour. She then reminds herself that she has always been lucky, from finding four-leaf clovers to retaining the memories of her past life. Filled with renewed determination, she straightens her navy bow, her green eyes shining with resolve as she prepares to face her destiny and fight to save her own life. That was her hopeful plan as she arrived at the grand, imposing Hayworth estate, its many spires reaching towards the sky, a symbol of the power held within. But then, a sudden sneeze erupts. The Dowager, an extreme perfectionist, winces in utter disgust at the unexpected and unseemly sound, her expression darkening as thorny vines seem to materialize around her imposing figure. Lowena realizes with horror that she's doomed, her plan potentially ruined before it had even begun. This marks the beginning of the third chapter in her unexpected new life. But instead of anger, a single tear traces a path down the Dowager's cheek, her expression softening into one of profound, heart-wrenching sorrow, completely catching Lowena off guard. The source of the sneeze is a small, flustered boy named Martin, who now trembles under the sudden, unwanted attention. Lowena panics internally, trapped between the crying boy and the formidable Dowager, wondering what she should possibly do. Of all the days for this to happen, it had to be today, when the Dowager was personally hosting a tea party attended by many other influential noble ladies. She was planning to use this rare chance to at least talk to the Dowager, but Martin's unfortunate sneeze ruined everything. She watches in horror as her one opportunity seems to be slipping away before she can do anything at all. A woman, likely Martin's mother or guardian, rushes over and harshly scolds him for his rudeness in front of the Dowager. Her sharp words only make the poor boy cry, his stuttering apology lost in a wave of tears and fear. The Dowager calmly intervenes, stating that the child is frightened and that seeing him cry is unsettling to her. Lowena is completely bewildered by this turn of events, as she knows from the novel that the Dowager is usually extremely strict about etiquette and would never be so lenient. She watches the Dowager, who seems weary and sad, wondering why she is letting this blatant breach of decorum go so quietly today of all days. A sudden thought strikes Lowena, realizing this unexpected turn of events could actually be a golden opportunity. One of the noble ladies suggests a walk in the estate's beautiful spring garden, proposing that they pair up with the children. Another lady agrees, noting the numbers work out perfectly for pairing up, which sends Lowena's mind racing with possibilities. Seizing the moment, Lowena confidently walks straight up to the most powerful woman in the room, Dowager Lady Hayworth. With a graceful curtsy, she introduces herself as Lowena Wheatfield, and boldly asks for the opportunity to learn elegance directly from the Dowager herself, a request designed to appeal to the woman's perfectionism. The Dowager's weary eyes narrow as she studies the little girl who's been watching her, remarking internally that it's been a long time since she's encountered a child so completely unafraid of her presence. Her hand rests on her cane as she admits she had no intention of taking a walk today, but she sees no reason to refuse if Lowena wishes to walk with her, but the girl immediately shouts her refusal. Lowena declares loudly that she isn't interested in walking, a shocking outburst that leaves the other adults completely stunned. One of the chaperones immediately rushes to apologize, trying to explain that the child must be mistaken in her bold refusal. Lowena clarifies her request, complimenting the Dowager's elegant intonation and asking to read books to her so she can learn the same refined speech patterns. She promises to work hard, and the Dowager is intrigued by the child's boldness in demanding what she wants. Impressed by her audacity, the Dowager instructs her butler, Henry, to prepare a place inside for them to read. Lowena celebrates her victory internally, overjoyed that her clever plan worked, and she's finally alone with the Dowager lady. They settle into a lavish room. As they sit across from each other, Lowena thinks this might be easier than she imagined, but the Dowager begins her questioning. The Dowager gets straight to the point, her sharp gaze fixed on Lowena as she demands to know her true intentions. She tells the girl not to play dumb, stating she knows full well Lowena didn't ask to come inside just to read. Clutching the book to her chest, Lowena drops the act and prepares to reveal her true ace in the hole. She correctly deduces that the Dowager is also weak to pollen, making the garden an uncomfortable place for her too. Lowena explains her deduction, pointing out that she saw the Dowager quietly sneeze at the same time as Martin, which is why she was so uncharacteristically lenient with the boy. She recalls the orphanage doctor always saying that adults' noses and throats tend to weaken with age, which confirmed her suspicion about the Dowager's pollen allergy. The Dowager, impressed, asks if Lowena noticed all that just by glancing at her, but the girl becomes flustered. Clutching the book tightly to her chest, Lowena asks if she can be completely honest with the Dowager. The Dowager grants her permission, leaning back with a thoughtful expression as she gestures for the young girl to proceed. Lowena reveals her true motive. She wanted to be alone with the Dowager to ask for a personal favor. She starts to ask if the Dowager would hear her request, but is cut off by a swift and absolute refusal. The Dowager's demeanor turns cold and menacing, stating that if Lowena thought she'd go easy on her because she's young, she was gravely mistaken. Without a moment's hesitation, the Dowager rings a bell and summons her butler, ordering him to escort the child out at once. Lowena panics as she's being thrown out, realizing in despair that her plan has failed before she even got to mention Seymour's name. Desperate, Lowena thinks about how hard she worked for this single chance as the butler arrives to escort her out. In a final, desperate plea, she slams her hands on the table and shouts out the favor she wanted to ask. She asks if, when the Dowager leaves, she might be allowed to kiss her cheek in front of the carriage. She knows the Dowager is not an easy opponent to win over with simple requests or emotional appeals. So she changes tactics, explaining that she always envies the children she sees in town kissing adults on the cheek. With tears welling in her eyes, she explains that as an orphan she has no adult to share that affection with and was just curious what it felt like. She commits to her performance, determined not to hold back any means necessary to achieve her goal. The Dowager's stern expression softens slightly, taken aback by the child's seemingly simple and innocent request. She reflects on how everyone who visits her estate always has a hidden agenda, from investments to selfish demands. Most people must have thought a grieving widow would be easy prey, yet this child only asked for a simple kiss, a display of odd sincerity that was completely disarming. The girl's bright, innocent smile strikes a deep chord within the Dowager, reminding her so powerfully of her own beloved daughter Rose, when she was young and full of life. Lowena stands there, clutching the book with a pure, unwavering smile, her entire presence radiating a warmth and sincerity that cuts through the Dowager's hardened, grieving heart like a ray of sunshine. The Dowager catches herself, realizing with a pang of sorrow that her thoughts have once again drifted to her late daughter Rose. With a sigh, she relents, stating that she understands the child's wish and will allow this simple request. As her teacher arrives to collect her, Lowina leans in to give the Dowager the promised kiss on the cheek. In a surprising gesture of warmth, the Dowager not only accepts the kiss but also places a ring on Lowena's finger, telling the young girl she is welcome to come again. The other children and their chaperones are left utterly speechless, unable to comprehend what is happening right before their eyes. Lowena waves a cheerful goodbye as she climbs into the carriage, leaving the Dowager to watch her departure thoughtfully. As the carriage pulls away, the Dowager turns to her faithful butler Henry, with a new instruction already forming. She instructs him to have the chef research dessert recipes, while back in the carriage, Lowena's friend excitedly asks what on earth just happened, to which she just smiles coyly. The Dowager specifies that desserts should be something a child would like, a clear sign that Lowena has successfully captured her interest. And that's where this chapter ends. A young boy approaches Lowena, offering her a tangerine as a gift. Much to her surprise, Lowena questions the gift, and the boy, Martin, explains it's a thank you for helping with the cleanup after his sneeze, which allowed him to avoid getting scolded for the mess. Another girl praises Lowena's amazing actions, but Lowena internally admits it was all part of a plan. A red-haired girl scoffs nearby. She loudly questions why everyone is making such a fuss over a commoner like Lowena. The girls gossip, noting the teacher gave Lowena extra eggs, speculating it's because she's being considered for adoption by the Hayworth family, a rare special treatment at the orphanage. The jealous girl scoffs at the idea, calling Lowena the dumbest orphan, who remains completely oblivious while happily eating her tangerine. She dismissively says old people are all like that, boasting that if she had kissed the Dowager, she would be liked even more. Lowena correctly deduces the girl is jealous of her new reputation, realizing she has become an eyesore to the other children. Lowena turns the tables on the jealous girl, cheekily suggesting she should try getting a kiss from the Dowager next time. The red-haired girl is completely flustered by the suggestion, her face flushing with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Their squabble is interrupted when a teacher bursts in, calling for Lowena and telling her to get ready to head out. Lowena looks up in confusion, asking where they are going so suddenly, completely unaware of what is about to happen. The teacher delivers the stunning news. The Dowager Marchioness of Hayworth herself has sent a carriage specifically for Lowena, a gesture of immense and unprecedented favor that shocks everyone present. Lowena stands frozen, her mind struggling to process the implications of this sudden and very public summons from the Dowager. It dawns on her with a gasp of disbelief that her desperate, cute act actually worked beyond her wildest dreams. With her plan succeeding, she decides to switch tactics to a full-on charm offensive to win the Dowager over completely. That afternoon, Lowena finds herself back at the grand Hayworth mansion, its towering spires and opulent architecture, a stark contrast to the humble orphanage she just left behind. She sits in the lavish drawing room, feeling glad she prepared a 3-step charm set just in case this happened. Lowena waits impatiently, noticing the Dowager is quite late and that the staff has been running around looking busy. The butler, Henry, approaches with an apologetic expression, informing Miss Lowena that she will have to go back for today. She protests, explaining she hasn't even met the Dowager Duchess yet and has something important to tell her before she leaves. A maid rushes in, declaring an emergency and reporting that the Dowager's condition is worse than before. As they hurry down the hall, Henry asks if there's been any word from the doctor, but the maid says he just left. Peeking from behind a pillar, Lowena worries that something serious has happened to the Dowager, fearing she'll lose her chance. She decides she has to follow them, her only chance slipping away if she doesn't act now. She overhears the maids discussing the Dowager's condition, noting she woke up but immediately fell back asleep, sweating profusely. A maid worries about what will happen to the Hayworth family, but Henry quickly silences her useless chatter. The staff rushes to get water and cloth, confirming for Lowena that the Dowager is indeed in bad shape. She stands before the Dowager's ornate room, deciding to sneak inside before anyone has a chance to return and stop her. She recalls a crucial detail from the novel. In the original story, the Dowager Duchess of Hayworth had already passed away. Her only appearance in the original work was when Seymour would wistfully mention her, wishing she were still alive to offer guidance, but Lowena now sees her lying unconscious in bed. She knows the Dowager's death is supposed to be 7 years from now, when the story starts, and she wonders if this chronic illness is somehow related to her eventual fate. Analyzing the symptoms of sudden drowsiness, cold sweats, and no visible injuries, a shocking realization suddenly dawns on her. The butler returns, shocked to find Miss Lowena in the room, and tells her to leave so the Dowager can rest. She urgently shouts for sugar water. She demands it immediately. The simple remedy of sugar water delivered with a slice of cake was all that was needed to stabilize the Dowager's condition. The Dowager slowly awakens from her collapse, her eyes fluttering open as she groggily questions if she is in her own room. Lowena cheerfully greets the waking Dowager, who dazedly asks who she is, not recognizing the little girl at her bedside. Lowena brightly explains that the Dowager collapsed from low blood sugar, so she made her some sugar water. The Dowager is surprised by the diagnosis, but more importantly, asks if Lowena waited for her to wake up. Lowena admits she was too worried to go home, even when the butler told her to leave. She explains that the Dowager's symptoms look just like the low blood sugar the orphanage doctor suffers from. Hoping the first aid she learned might help, she apologizes again for staying without permission, showing her caring nature. The Dowager understands, recalling her doctor's advice that the illness isn't a big deal if managed consistently. A faint, genuine smile graces the Dowager's lips as she looks at the girl, thanking her for helping once again. The Dowager notices her blanket is adorned with small, folded cloth flowers. Lowina explains the butler brought cloth, so she folded them while waiting, asking if they aren't pretty. The Dowager recognizes them as roses, a craft she used to do often with her own daughter, Rose, when she was little, and is moved to see them again after so long. With a warm and sincere smile, the Dowager thanks Lowina again, acknowledging the child has helped her through a crisis. Lowina brushes off the thanks with a cheerful smile as the Dowager observes her, thinking that she is a rare child with a kind, upright, and wise heart, a quality she deeply admires. The Dowager addresses Lowina directly, stating her wish to repay the debt she now owes the young girl. She explains that since she handles the family's internal affairs, all of Hayworth's considerable assets also belong to her. The Dowager firmly states that since she owes Lowina her life, she must pay a fitting price, and she has been thinking about a specific proposal if Lowina is all right with it. She then makes an offer that will change Lowina's life forever, an adoption into the powerful Hayworth family. Lowina is utterly stunned by the proposal, barely managing to stammer out the word, adoption, in complete disbelief. And that's where this chapter ends. The Dowager, feeling she owes Lowina her life, prepares to make a fitting offer of repayment. She then asks the most life-altering question, would Lowina like to be adopted into the Hayworth family? Lowina is left completely speechless, the fork frozen mid-air as she stammers in utter disbelief at the word adoption. The Dowager assures her she won't bring shame to the family name and presses for an answer. Lowina's mind immediately races with the possibilities adoption would bring, imagining a life filled with delicious food, beautiful clothes, and endless desserts, a world away from the hardships of the orphanage. She acknowledges that, considering how they first met, this is an incredible, once-in-a-lifetime offer. Despite her gratitude, she politely declines, explaining that the offer might be a bit difficult to accept. The Dowager is taken aback by the refusal, her brow furrowing as she questions what the girl could possibly mean. Lowina finally reveals her true, audacious goal, declaring that she wants to become Duke Somerset's sponsored child because her real target has always been Duke Seymour himself, not Lady Hayworth. The Dowager questions her choice, arguing adoption would be better, but Lowina counters, saying she overheard maids talking about the Duke's struggles after losing his family. She adds that she also heard the Dowager is very worried about him, a statement that visibly affects the older woman. Lowena continues, explaining that since the Duke is also head of the Hayworth family, greedy people are already trying to steal the title from him. She astutely points out that in the worst-case scenario, the Duke might not even be able to pass the dukedom to his young nephew Dante. Her heart aches, thinking about the Duke's guilt and the Dowager's pain from watching him suffer. She presents her solution. Since the nephew has a different name, if she became a sponsored child and married him, it would create a legitimate justification for his inheritance and ease their worries. Lowena admits she doesn't know what the nephew is like, but insists that it doesn't really matter to her. She smiles, saying the Dowager wouldn't have to worry anymore, and she's content just to ease their burdens. The Dowager takes Lowena's small hand in her own, a silent acknowledgement of the child's profound and unexpected understanding. Looking at the little girl, the Dowager admits that she is much more thoughtful than she could have ever imagined. The Dowager agrees to Lowena's wish, confident she can handle the inevitable gossip about her background, but on the strict condition that she must eventually marry the Duke's nephew. However, before the arrangement can be finalized, the Dowager informs her that there is one more thing she must do, and so we return to the present. Lowena addresses the Duke directly. The scene flashes back to their very first meeting, where Lowena boldly planted a kiss on his cheek and promised that they could become a great family together, a memory that still clearly affects him. The Duke flinches, clearly unsettled by the memory and the current, equally bizarre situation unfolding before him. Running a hand through his hair in frustration, Seymour admits to his mother-in-law that he has no idea what this child is talking about, or how she managed to win her over. He immediately assumes the worst, warning Lowena that if she's after the position of successor, he will absolutely refuse, but she quickly cuts him off. She proudly presents her trump card, a written pledge, signed and sealed, that she made with the Dowager on the absolute condition that she would never be greedy for the successor's position. Seymour is utterly flabbergasted by the existence of a pledge, but the Dowager simply chides him for being inflexible and tells him to just raise the child, much to his despair. The Dowager dismisses his concerns, arguing she isn't asking him to raise a newborn, just provide a tutor. Seymour can only stare in disbelief, questioning if his mother-in-law is truly serious about this ridiculous plan. Lowina steps in, apologizing to the Duke and taking full responsibility for the situation, explaining she insisted on the request. She reveals that the Dowager originally offered her a place in the Hayworth family, but as an orphan who has never known love, she could tell something else was at play. She tells Seymour that she can clearly see the Dowager always thinks of him first, worrying about him more than anyone. That is precisely why she wanted to ease the Dowager's worries, even if it was just a little. She explains she didn't want to be family in name only, but someone who could truly share their heart. She promises not to be greedy or overstep, saying that just being someone who can check on them occasionally is enough. Holding the pledge before her, she makes her final, vulnerable plea, asking if even that small wish is not allowed. Seymour is left speechless, wondering how a mere 10-year-old child could grasp their complicated situation so clearly, especially when she must know that being adopted would have been a much easier path. He realizes the reason she wants to be a sponsored child, even signing a pledge, is simply because she wants to be a real family member who can ease their burdens. Seymour takes the pledge from her, his expression unreadable, as he silently considers the document and the child's intentions. He finally speaks, informing the hopeful Lowina that he will read the pledge thoroughly before making any final decision. Lowina looks up at him with wide, hopeful eyes, a silent plea hanging in the air as she awaits his verdict. Her face breaks into a radiant smile as she eagerly agrees, telling him he can read it as much as he likes. He observes her, thinking she is excessively mature and wise, unlike any other child her age he has ever known. Her maturity reminds him of someone else, a person from a painful memory that still haunts him deeply. That night, a decision was made. Lowena finds herself at the Somerset ducal mansion, a grand and imposing structure illuminated against the starry night sky, its sheer scale a testament to the Duke's immense power and influence. Tucked into a luxurious bed, Lowena reflects that things went even better than she expected, surprised he let her stay. Tucked snugly in her new bed, she knows this is all thanks to getting Lady Hayworth on her side. Now she just needs to slowly get close to Seymour to get the medicine. She bounces with excitement, feeling great about her future, but then suddenly remembers something important she completely forgot. She slips on her fluffy bear slippers. A maid named Irie finds her awake, but Lowena quickly asks if she happens to know where the Duke's room is. Irie confirms she knows the Duke's room, but questions why she would need it at this hour, earning a mischievous smile from Lowena. Walking confidently down the moonlit hallway, Lowena reminds herself that she has a promise to keep with the Duke, and that's where this chapter ends. Night fell upon the grand Seymour estate, its towering facade bathed in the pale glow of the full moon, casting long shadows across the manicured grounds. Inside his study, an aide reminded Duke Seymour that it was now Miss Lowena's first day. The aide suggested checking on her, but the Duke dismissed the idea, questioning why he'd need to. His aide, Axel Portman, pointed out that despite his words, he gave her the best room. Axel continued to tease him, suggesting he liked the young lady more than he was letting on. The Duke suddenly stood to leave, claiming his mother-in-law had insisted he stay at the mansion. Axel shouted in disbelief. Just as he reached the door, it swung open to reveal Lowena standing on the other side. She stood before him in her nightgown, surrounded by a magical aura of flowers, and boldly declared she had come to give him a good-night kiss. Completely taken aback by her strange request, the Duke could only stare in utter confusion. Lowena explained with a bright smile that she had promised to do this regularly ever since he sponsored her. The Duke tried to refuse, claiming he had work, but Lowena was shocked he would work so late. She grabbed his hand, insisting he shouldn't be like that, and generously offered to read him a book. Without waiting for an answer, she eagerly pulled the reluctant Duke along, telling him to hurry up. Resigned to his fate, the Duke decided he had no choice but to play along for a little while. Soon, she was engrossed in a storybook, reading aloud about a prince finding a dragon deep in a forest. As she read about the prince's thoughts, the Duke lay there, quietly thinking this situation was driving him crazy. He listened to her story about the prince hesitating, internally noting how she'd learned to read at the orphanage, her voice being unnecessarily clear and carrying through the quiet room. She continued her tale, describing how the prince covered the dragon with his cloak before a fairy appeared. The fairy in the story explained that the dragon was cursed to sleep forever, and the only way to wake it was through the touch of someone with a warm heart. Listening to the story, the Duke began to ponder if the dragon truly wanted to wake up. He wondered if sleeping forever would have been better, or if the dragon would resent the prince, admitting he himself used to think that way after his accident. But as Lowena continued reading, he realized her strangely bright voice was keeping those dark thoughts at bay, a welcome change from his usual lonely nights in the grand bedroom. A small, serene smile graced his lips as he drifted off to sleep, thinking her voice was unnecessarily soothing. The next morning arrived. A maid quietly entered. She assumed the Duke had been drinking again, a sad habit he'd developed since the mistress passed away, but her eyes fell upon an unexpected storybook left on the floor. In disbelief, her gaze shifted from the book towards the bed, where sunlight streamed into the room. The sight that greeted her was utterly shocking. The Duke was asleep in his bed, with little Miss Lowena peacefully nestled in his arms, her small hands resting on his chest. The chapter reached its end. A beautiful, sunny morning dawned on the ducal estate, with the gentle chirping of birds filtering through the window, signaling the start of a peaceful new day. Duke Seymour woke up feeling incredibly refreshed, realizing with surprise that he had slept deeply until this hour, completely free of any headache or hangover for the first time in ages. Axel was moved to tears, amazed the Duke slept without alcohol thanks to Lowena. Seymour, however, was just annoyed and demanded to know where the brat had gone. When Axel informed him that the young lady was having her meal, the Duke furiously slammed the door, shouting that he wasn't eating. Meanwhile, in the dining hall, Lowena marveled at the incredible breakfast spread before her, featuring adorable cat-faced toast, sweet pudding, and a colorful parfait she had only ever dreamed about. She happily tucked into the meal, exclaiming how good it was and that she'd never eaten like this at the orphanage. The chef was pleased it suited her taste, encouraging her to eat plenty, which Lowena enthusiastically agreed to. As she ate, Lowena remembered falling asleep beside the Duke, feeling relieved he wasn't angry. She believed she had gained some favor, bringing her one step closer to her goal. Her meal was interrupted when a servant approached, informing her that Dowager Lady Hayworth had sent a letter. He offered to let her check it after her meal, and she excitedly accepted the letter, thanking Hugo. She began reading the letter from the Dowager, which started by asking how her first day was. The Dowager asked if the ill-tempered Duke had bullied her, but Lowena just smiled, thinking they'd slept soundly together. The letter announced the Dowager's upcoming visit, making Lowena excited, as she anticipated being praised for her success. But then she read a postscript, mentioning that the child she wanted to meet would be coming along. A sudden realization dawned on her, her eyes widening in shock as she processed the letter's final words. The letter could only be referring to one person, Seymour's nephew and the official heir to Somerset. The boy with striking yellow eyes and dark hair appeared before her, surrounded by a flourish of blue flowers, his identity confirmed as the one and only Dante Graham. The scene faded out. The chapter comes to a close. The sun shone brightly on the sprawling Somerset mansion, its grand architecture and meticulously kept gardens creating an imposing yet beautiful sight as everyone prepared for the important arrival. Indeed, today was the day that the Dowager Lady Hayworth was scheduled to pay her official visit. As she arrived, the Dowager greeted Lowena, who eagerly ran to welcome the woman she now considered family. Lowena reflected that even though she chose the Dowager purely to survive, seeing her again filled her with a strange warmth, making her feel genuinely happy and moved by their reunion. She wondered if, despite her original motives, she had grown accustomed to this new, comfortable life. Overjoyed to see her, she began chattering about how delicious the food is and how soft the beds are. She then proudly announced that she managed to put Duke Seymour to sleep by reading him a fairy tale. The Dowager's praise made her blush with pride as she was told how impressive it was. The Dowager then casually mentioned that, just as she wrote in the letter, she came with that child. Lowena's heart fluttered with a mix of anxiety and anticipation, confirming her suspicions from the letter. At the Dowager's gentle prompting, a small figure in polished shoes began to step forward. She steeled her resolve, understanding that today was the day she would finally meet her intended fiancé. Walking towards her was a young boy dressed in a formal suit, the very person who might become her future marriage partner and the key to her entire plan for survival. His striking yellow eyes met hers with a blank, almost sorrowful expression. This was undoubtedly the heir to the dukedom, Dante Graham, looking exactly as she remembered from the novel. Some time later, a delicate tea set was placed on the table, but the atmosphere was anything but relaxed. An incredibly awkward silence filled the room as Lowena wondered how it ended up with just the two of them. She remembered the Dowager conveniently excusing herself to check on household affairs, instructing them to stay together. She quickly scolded herself, remembering this was her original goal, and that if she failed to marry Dante, she would be sent straight back to the dreaded orphanage for good. She imagined the grim alternative, failing to cure her illness and wasting away, her tombstone marking a young life cut short. This outcome was absolutely unacceptable to her. To avoid that fate, she knew she had to get close to him, but his sour expression made her uneasy. She decided to break the ice with a universal solution, remembering that everyone likes cake. She hesitantly called out his name, finally breaking the thick, uncomfortable silence between them. With a dazzling smile, she offered him some cake, praising the chef's desserts, and confidently assuring him that he would certainly enjoy the taste just as much as she did. After a brief pause, Dante set his teacup down, his voice cold as he addressed her directly. He warned her not to mistake this place for her own home, reminding her that he alone would be the heir. Completely stunned by his hostility, she realized this was not the reaction she had been expecting at all. He slammed his cup down, cutting her off and stating he didn't want to hear anything she had to say. As she shot up from her seat, a shocking thought crossed her mind about his true nature. The horrifying realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. Dante must think she's here to steal his position as heir. Determined, she knew she had to follow him immediately and explain this terrible misunderstanding before it was too late. But when she looked, he was already gone, vanishing in just a moment. She worried he had left the mansion entirely. Panicking, she realized she didn't know the mansion's layout and needed a high place to see everything at once. Suddenly, she remembered the biggest tree on the grounds, a perfect vantage point to find Dante from above. She decided to quickly climb up while no one was looking, and then come straight back down. She confidently recalled her past, remembering she was famous at the orphanage for being good at climbing trees. With effortless grace, she scaled the massive ivy-covered trunk, the wind catching her long hair as the breathtaking expanse of the ducal estate's gardens unfolded far below her. From her perch high above, she marveled at the sheer scale of the property, a world away from the orphanage. She quickly shook her head, realizing this was no time for sightseeing. She had to find Dante immediately. She shielded her eyes from the sun, scanning the vast gardens below to find where Dante ran off to. And there he was, sulking by himself near a wall. Just as she expected, he hadn't run very far. She prepared to climb down and explain everything, but the sudden sound of voices stopped her in her tracks. Peeking through the leaves, she saw two men strolling along the path, one discussing some kind of pastoral concept. Her eyes widened in shock as she recognized one of them as none other than Duke Seymour himself. From her vantage point, she could see that Dante was still lost in his own thoughts, completely unaware. The Duke kept walking. She realized with a jolt that the Duke was heading straight for Dante's hiding spot, an impending confrontation. She quickly calculated that, at this rate, the two of them were bound to run into each other, and Dante's unauthorized escape from the Dowager would be discovered very soon. Seeing the inevitable collision course, a new plan began to form in her mind to handle the situation. From high up in the tree, she called out to the Duke, a desperate attempt to draw his attention away from Dante before he could be discovered, her voice echoing through the garden. Startled by the sudden shout from above, Dante looked up, his eyes widening in confusion at the scene. Putting on her brightest smile, Lowina cheerfully greeted the Duke, asking if he'd like her to prepare tea, or perhaps join her for a lovely walk through the beautiful garden. The Duke simply asked why she was up there, to which she quickly lied about playing hide-and-seek with Dante. The Duke's companion gasped. He suddenly exclaimed that she was perfect, leaving Lowena completely baffled by the unexpected declaration. The man with purple hair clapped his hands together, his eyes sparkling with inspiration as he praised her appearance, calling her a lovely young girl who was neither too noble-looking nor overly plain. He had decided she was it. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating her as she sat innocently on the branch, her long hair and ruffled dress creating an almost ethereal image that perfectly captured his artistic vision. She was utterly confused by his words. The chapter comes to an end. The story flashes back to just a few hours ago, setting the scene at a different grand estate. A report was being written, noting that the Dowager Lady Hayworth had paid a visit to the ducal residence. Seymour reasoned that she must have gone to see the child, as she would have visited his company otherwise. Axel excitedly reported that the servants were full of praise for the exceptionally friendly young lady. The Duke mused that she was indeed overly friendly, recalling her behavior from just a few days ago. He remembered her appearing with a bright "ta-da!" announcing that she had brought a new book for him today. She had explained that she wanted to read this one to him, changing the genre to prevent boredom. His only thought at the time was one of bewildered disbelief. Again, as the routine continued. He recalled that ever since that day, the moment he finished work, she would come to his room. After letting her sit by his side and read fairy tales until he fell asleep several times, her daily visits had become a completely natural and frankly unavoidable part of his evenings. The Duke continued working late into the night at his company, buried under a mountain of paperwork. His aide announced the carriage had arrived, but the Duke curtly reminded him he wasn't returning to the mansion. Axel sheepishly explained that while they were aware of his plans, Miss Lowena had taken matters into her own hands. He revealed that Lowina had personally sent the carriage, insisting that he absolutely must leave work on time. The Duke reflected on how she wouldn't even let him work late, forcing him to leave at a precise hour. His new routine involved returning to the mansion, only to listen to the child read fairy tales beside him, her soft voice lulling him into a peaceful sleep he hadn't known for years. As if that weren't enough, she now insisted on having breakfast with him every single morning without fail. Her voice called out to him. Waving goodbye as he left for work, she would always give him the same bright smile and final instruction. As they walked away, Axel couldn't help but comment on how truly adorable she was. The Duke looked back, a faint smile on his lips as he admitted to himself that things were going very well. He considered that he'd only indulged her at first because he was worried about his mother-in-law's scolding. However, he couldn't deny that ever since she arrived, his physical condition had improved quite a bit, a noticeable change that even he had to acknowledge while working at his desk. He continued to ponder the subtle but significant changes that had occurred in his life recently. Axel chimed in, pointing out that lately there were smiles on all the servants' faces. Axel enthusiastically pointed out the Duke's clearer complexion and his faster work pace as proof of improvement. Overcome with emotion, Axel declared he'd never felt so free of worry, prompting the annoyed Duke to react. As Axel left, still claiming sincerity, the Duke heard a knock and simply said to come in. The door opened to reveal Derek, the brand planning director, who entered with a worried expression, explaining that they had encountered a serious problem while preparing the new brand launch. The Duke's expression hardened, his focus shifting entirely as he repeated the word back to his employee. Derek explained the disastrous news. Their child model had injured her face and was suspending all activities. The Duke sighed, rubbing his tired eyes, and concluded that they would simply have to find a new model. Derek stressed that it wouldn't be easy, as the photo shoot was scheduled for the very next day. The problem was immense because it had been incredibly difficult to secure the first model for Seymour's company, which primarily operated as a trade-based distribution business based at the bustling harbor. The company had recently decided to launch a new apparel brand for the sole purpose of distributing a unique shipment of beautiful, naturally dyed cotton fabric that had just come into their possession. This venture was perfectly timed, as high society was coincidentally in the midst of a simple pastoral life trend, with noble women now favoring natural aesthetics over flashy silks and expensive, gaudy jewelry. Seymour, ever the astute businessman, planned to capitalize on this popular trend by branding these naturally dyed cotton fabrics. For this crucial branding effort, they hired the famous commercial artist Aubert to bring their vision to life. He was, without a doubt, the most popular artist among the nobility at the time, an irreplaceable talent who had successfully promoted every high-end clothing brand, turning their campaigns into pure gold. The problem, however, was that this genius artist was known for being incredibly and frustratingly picky. He had dramatically thrown a tantrum over the previous model, shouting that she was not the feeling he wanted. The artist was infamous for his temperament, often refusing to work if he disliked the chosen model. He had passionately declared his specific vision: someone healthy and pure, refined yet modest, a child like a simple wildflower, not some expensive and overly cultivated bouquet from a hothouse. This left the Duke in despair, wondering where on earth they were supposed to find such a child. It was then that Axel had chimed in, suggesting that there just happened to be one at the mansion right now. Back in the present, Aubert knelt before Lowena, proclaiming she was exactly what he envisioned. Pure and untouched by the world, a perfect representation of the brand's new pastoral concept. He ecstatically called her a forest fairy, a comparison that left Lowena completely bewildered by his strange behavior. She couldn't comprehend the idea of being a model, her mind picturing a professional in a sleek, modern outfit. Aubert, however, was completely captivated, his face alight with joy as he praised her perfect, natural bearing. The eccentric artist continued his rant, declaring that the temperature, humidity, atmosphere, and even the gentle breeze were perfect. He dramatically declared that with the scattering leaves as his witness, he, Aubert, could draw anything if this child were his model. Lowina recognized the name, realizing this was the famous painter whose value had been soaring lately. The Duke explained to Lowina that he thought she'd be suitable for the project and came to ask for her help. He reassured her that she could refuse if the request felt too burdensome for her to take on. He promised not to force her, but if she agreed, he would do anything for her in return. The Duke worried that the offer was too sudden and that she probably wouldn't feel inclined to accept it. But as Lowena thought about it, she suddenly realized she had seen this exact situation before in a novel. She recalled a part of the story that briefly mentioned Seymour's failed business, a significant but overlooked detail in the original plot, represented by a shattered portrait of the brand's intended image. The failure began with the inability to secure a child model, which started a domino effect that caused Seymour's business to gradually crumble and lose enormous investment funds. As the company began to falter, the financial and emotional strain caused Duke Seymour to grow ever sharper and harsher, his personality twisting into a much darker version of himself. A new thought struck her with startling clarity. If she could solve this problem for him, she could turn this entire situation around to her advantage, securing her future and her goals. The realization was simple and powerful. Helping the Duke succeed meant she could obtain the medicine she needed sooner. With renewed purpose and a brilliant smile, she looked at the Duke and enthusiastically accepted the offer. The Duke was surprised by her immediate response, asking if she was truly certain about deciding so quickly. She confirmed her decision with unwavering confidence, stating that she was simply happy to be able to help him. Visibly moved, he thanked her and insisted that she name something she wanted in return for her help. Seizing the opportunity he had just presented, a clever idea sparked in her mind as she considered her request. Unseen by the others, Dante was still hiding nearby, watching his uncle and Lowena with intense curiosity. He was completely startled when Lowena suddenly called out his name, breaking the secrecy of his hiding spot. With all eyes on her, she stood in the sunlit garden and revealed her one condition. Could Dante become a model for the brand as well, joining her in the campaign? Dante was utterly flabbergasted by her audacious request, wondering what on earth she was saying now. The chapter comes to a close. Inside the carriage, Dante looked out the window, his mind replaying the strange events of the day. He reflected that it had been a year since he last visited the Duke of Somerset's mansion. He remembered how nothing in the mansion had changed at all, yet the entire atmosphere felt completely different from before, a shift he couldn't quite put his finger on. The reason for that change was undeniably that child, Lowena, who had winked and cheerfully said goodbye. He replayed her audacious request in his mind, the way she'd asked if he could become a model too. He scoffed internally, wondering if she really thought he would grant such a ridiculous request from her. He stewed over the fact that not only had she managed to win over his notoriously picky grandmother, but now even his uncle wanted to formally bring her into the family. The way she stood beside his uncle, it almost felt like she was already a natural part of the household. It was as if she had been a family member living there for a long time, with all the servants in the mansion treating her with a kindness he'd never seen before. He clenched his fist, a terrifying thought consuming him. What if she really takes his place? His nanny's cruel words echoed in his memory, fueling his fear that he might be abandoned again. The story flashes back 1 year ago to a dark and lonely hall where his nanny prepared to leave him, a small figure silhouetted against the bright, unforgiving light of the open door. He ran after her, begging. He pleaded with her to stay, but she coldly asked if he knew why she'd stayed after his parents died. He naively thought she was worried about him, but her cruel smile revealed it wasn't for such a trivial reason. She admitted her only motive was to squeeze more money out of his uncle, the new Duke. Her final words were a harsh lesson in reality. He could be thrown away at any time, a devastating blow that shattered his innocent world and left him weeping in the cold darkness. She left him standing alone in the vast, empty hall, her parting words echoing around him. No one cares about a child without money or a guardian, a truly isolating and terrifying truth. Now with his parents gone, he feared that if his uncle also lost interest, he would be truly alone. He sat alone, consumed by the dark thought that he really might be left all alone in the world. Looking at his reflection, he resolved that at the very least, he must perfectly carry out any task his uncle asked. This was his only way to prove his usefulness to him and secure his place in the family. He remembered being summoned to his uncle's grand office, the vast space emphasizing the weight of the Duke's words as he calmly stated, "I need your help, Dante." The Duke had asked if he could become the face of the White Rose brand alongside Lowena, acknowledging it might be a burden and giving him the option to refuse. A single thought blazed through the darkness of his fear and uncertainty. This was his chance. Seeing it as a chance to show he was needed, he blurted out that he would do it. He stood before his uncle and pleaded, promising to show that he was truly worthy of the heir position. A warm, genuine smile spread across the Duke's face as he simply said, "Thank you, Dante." The Duke told him he'd be counting on him, and a flustered Dante could only manage a simple yes. Dante reflected on his impulsive answer, now doubting if he could ever win everyone's favor like she does. As the carriage continued on its way, he decided to push his worries aside for the moment. He bolstered his courage as the carriage finally rolled to a stop, a servant announcing his arrival. The scene shifts to the photo shoot, where the artist Aubert was already directing with his usual flamboyant energy. Aubert was in his element, enthusiastically instructing Lowena on how to hold the bouquet of yellow flowers. Lowena's face lit up with a brilliant smile as she noticed Dante's arrival, holding a large bouquet of sunny yellow flowers. Aubert immediately praised her expression, finding it perfect for his painting. With open arms and a warm smile, she welcomed Dante as he walked into the studio with Axel. Dante watched her, his expression hardening with resolve to do better and earn his uncle's recognition. Lowena called for him to pose with her, but he ignored her and walked past, following a servant's directions. Her cheerful expression faltered as she realized she'd been ignored, wondering if he still disliked her. She quickly composed herself, seeing this photo shoot not as a setback but as a perfect opportunity to get closer to him. The photo shoot began with them posing together under a parasol, Lowena's cheerful smile contrasting sharply with Dante's stiff and reluctant posture as they held a bouquet of bright yellow flowers. Next, they were instructed to press their cheeks together for a cute, intimate pose, with Lowena winking playfully while Dante simply looked annoyed by the close proximity to her. Then they moved into a more dynamic pose, holding hands as if floating through a dreamscape of soft blue flowers and sparkling pearls, creating a truly magical and adorable scene. Aubert was completely overjoyed with the results, exclaiming that the sketch was flowing without a single hitch. After the successful session, Lowena suggested they take a short break, turning to ask Dante how he was feeling. But he had already vanished. A helpful staff member informed her that the young master had gone ahead to the lounge first. Before she could leave, Aubert called her over, excited to show her the sketch he had just completed. She admired the beautiful drawing, noting how well Dante turned out, and asked if she could show it to him. Carrying the sketch, she planned to use it as a perfect excuse to start a conversation with Dante. She believed that if they talked while looking at the drawing, things might get better between them. She suddenly bumped into someone. The other girl immediately lashed out, angrily accusing Lowena of hitting her and calling her a little brat. Lowena tried to apologize, but the girl haughtily demanded to know if she was even aware of who she was. Lowena recognized this type from the orphanage, the kind who tries to win arguments by simply being louder. As the girl continued yelling, Lowena simply beamed, knowing that dealing with kids like this was easy as pie. Leaning in with a playful expression, she pointed at the girl's clenched fist and said it looked like a dog's paw. The bizarre comment left the girl completely flustered, her face flushing red as she stammered in disbelief. Lowena continued to smile brightly, repeating that her hand looked like a dog's paw, knowing that smiling back at someone who is blindly angry is always the most effective strategy. The girl trembled with rage as Lowena calmly repeated that her clenched fist looked like a dog's paw. Enraged, she tries to hit her. Lowena flinched, bracing for the impact. But the blow never landed. Lowena opened her eyes, surprised to see that someone had suddenly intervened at the very last second. It was Dante, his yellow eyes blazing with anger as he firmly gripped the girl's wrist, his voice sharp as he demanded to know what she thought she was doing. Lowena could only stare in disbelief, completely shocked to see Dante standing up for her like this. The chapter comes to an end. Dante stood between the two girls, his voice sharp as he demanded to know what was going on. Gripping the girl's wrist tighter, he accused her of being about to hit someone, his eyes narrowed in disapproval. The girl yanked her hand back, defiantly asking who he was and blaming Lowena for starting the fight. She rudely told him to mind his own business and get lost, crossing her arms in a huff. Dante remained firm, stating that regardless of who started it, Lowena was here as a professional model. He explained that since he was also a model working with her, he was naturally concerned for his colleague. Peeking from behind the sketch, Lowena was touched, thinking that maybe he didn't hate her that much after all. The other girl exploded in frustration, demanding to know what was wrong with them and boasting about her long modeling career. She then played her trump card, questioning if they thought she came alone before screaming for her daddy. Dante scoffed at her cheap tactic of calling for an adult, completely unimpressed by the childish threat. A man burst into the room, rushing to his daughter's side and asking what was wrong. The girl immediately played the victim, crying to her father that the other children had bullied her. The man furiously demanded to know which family they belonged to and where their parents were. Lowena looked him straight in the eye and boldly declared that she doesn't have any parents. Her blunt and unexpected answer left the man completely speechless, his arrogant demeanor faltering for a moment. The man sized them up, noting their unfamiliar clothes and concluding they were sponsored orphans from a noble family. He sneered, remarking that this is why kids raised without parents are no good and lack manners. A new voice cut in, warning the man that he would pay the price for her careless mouth. Duke Seymour strode into the room with an imposing presence, his tall figure casting a long shadow as he approached, his sudden appearance stunning the rude nobleman into shocked silence. The Duke's eyes were cold with fury, his voice low and dangerous as he stated that he had just heard the man insult not only his niece but also the girl he was personally sponsoring. The man stammered in shock, realizing his mistake, but the Duke coldly stated his excuse only made it worse. With a chilling smile, the Duke explained that Lowena was brought here as a future successor, meaning the man had not just insulted a child, but the entire dukedom of Somerset itself. Terrified by the implications, the man immediately bowed, frantically apologizing for his ignorance and disrespect. Just then, Aubert walked in, asking about the commotion, while the Duke noted his timely arrival. The Duke calmly explained that these people insulted Lowena and Dante, adding he couldn't stand being in the same space. He then gave Aubert an ultimatum: handle the situation if he wanted to continue painting Lowena's portrait. The chapter comes to a close. After the incident, Lowena was treated to a delicious slice of strawberry shortcake, a comforting reward. A maid named Irie checked on her, offering more cake after hearing about the scary experience. With her cheeks full, Lowena happily declared that if she gets cake for it, she'd welcome such experiences any time. The Duke approached Dante, mentioning he heard how he'd stepped in when Lowena was being insulted earlier. He gently patted Dante's head, praising him and saying he was really glad he was there. Dante's cheeks flushed with a shy warmth, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Lowena thanked him for his help, but Dante dismissed it, saying it was something he should have done. As she took a bite of her cake, Lowena noticed that Dante seemed much happier than before. Just then, a servant arrived with another slice of cake, encouraging her to eat more of it. Lowena noticed that Dante still wasn't eating, sitting quietly with his own untouched slice of cake before him. Wondering if he disliked cake, she cheerfully offered him some of hers, telling him it was really good. He simply told her to eat it herself, his cold demeanor returning in an instant, leaving her disappointed. Dante suddenly stood up and walked away, bluntly telling her it was none of her business when she asked. Lowena found his sudden mood swing strange, as he had seemed to be in a good mood just moments before. A book flips open. Elsewhere, Dante sat alone in a dimly lit room, trying to read, but finding himself unable to concentrate. His uncle's words of praise echoed in his mind, the simple compliment making his cheeks flush warmly. He chided himself for getting so excited over a single compliment, feeling flustered by his own reaction. He told himself he only did what he was supposed to and shouldn't get happy over something so small. He resolved that he shouldn't act like a child, the traumatic memory of his nanny abandoning him in the dark, empty hall still haunting his every thought and action. He tried to calm himself, insisting he must remain quiet and calm, just as he's always been. Suddenly, Lowena burst in. He was startled by her sudden appearance, but she simply smiled, stating that she knew she'd find him here. She explained that because of the earlier chaos, he didn't get dinner, so she happily presented him with a generous slice of strawberry shortcake as a peace offering. She acknowledged his earlier refusal, but figured he'd be hungry anyway, leaving Dante surprised she came just for him. Despite her kind gesture, he stubbornly turned away, blushing slightly as he insisted that he didn't want it. Confused by his rejection, she pushed the cake closer, insisting it was really good, but he just repeated no. He forcefully knocked it away. The cake splattered on the floor. He angrily told her that kind of stuff is for kids, declaring that a successor can't be treated like one. He yelled that she could throw tantrums and be spoiled all she wanted, because everyone likes her, a luxury he clearly felt he did not have. His words hung in the air, revealing the deep insecurity and pressure he felt, which she now finally understood. He finally confessed his deepest fear, his voice cracking with emotion as he cried out that unlike her, he lives with the constant, terrifying possibility of being abandoned at any moment. Lowena calmly questioned his fear, asking why the Duke would ever abandon him in the first place. Tears welled up in Dante's eyes, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief as he looked at her, his voice barely a whisper as he processed her unexpected question. She gently wiped a tear from his cheek, her voice soft but firm, as she reassured him with absolute certainty that the Duke would never, ever abandon him, no matter what happened. Still crying, he challenged her, his voice trembling as he demanded to know how she could be so sure. A small, confident smile played on her lips as she looked at him, ready to reveal her secret. With a bright, triumphant expression, she clutched her hands to her chest and declared, "Because I'm the proof." Dante was completely flustered by her strange declaration, but she continued, her voice clear and unwavering as she finally confessed the true reason she had come to the Somerset estate, to marry him. She looked him directly in the eyes and made her ultimate declaration. She came here specifically to make him the next Duke of Somerset, securing his future and his place in the family forever. The shocking revelation hit him with the force of a physical blow, his mind reeling with the unbelievable thought. The chapter ends there. With a beaming smile, Lowena reveals the shocking truth behind her arrival, declaring she came to Somerset with the express purpose of marrying him and making him the next Duke. Completely stunned by her declaration, Dante can only stare back with a flushed face, utterly speechless. Dante struggles to comprehend her plan, asking if the Duke actually agreed to such a thing. The logic escapes him entirely, and he asks why they'd ever make him the heir. Lowena keeps her true motives hidden, thinking to herself that her actual goal isn't the heir's title, but finding a cure for the deadly Lily disease she suffers from. Instead, she tells him a simpler, more emotional reason. All she ever really wanted was a family. Her words hang in the air as the image of the destroyed cake reappears, a stark reminder of his own fears. She confesses she was always lonely and just wanted someone to need her. She flashes a brilliant, sincere smile, insisting that she has no interest in being the heir. Simply having a family by her side would be more than enough for her. Her words strike a deep chord within Dante as he realizes they are not so different. Lowena is just like him, terrified of being left all alone in the world. Seeing his stunned silence, Lowena sheepishly admits that her confession was sudden and not at all planned. After a long silence, Dante finally speaks, quietly telling Lowena that he believes what she said. He repeats himself with a shy but sincere expression, affirming his trust in her heartfelt words. Dante clarifies that he believes her about wanting a family, a desire he deeply understands himself. She grabs his hand excitedly. Overjoyed by his acceptance, Lowena beams at him, thanking him for finally trusting in her sincerity. Riding this wave of emotion, she proposes that they promise to never, ever betray one another. She leans in close, earnestly asking for his reassurance that he will always be on her side. She insists that he must be on her side too, confessing that she truly needs him, always. Taking her words to heart, Dante stares at her with newfound intensity, demanding she promise him now. Without a hint of hesitation, Lowena agrees with a radiant smile, eagerly making the requested promise. To formalize their new understanding, they lock hands in a childish but deeply meaningful pinky swear. With the serious moment past, Lowena's cheerful demeanor returns as she offers Dante some cookies. The two find a quiet spot on the floor of the grand, moonlit hall, whispering like conspirators as they decide to share the secret treats together, away from prying eyes. While munching on a heart-shaped cookie, Dante quietly asks that they keep the day's events a secret. Dante questions the large quantity of cookies, prompting Lowena to explain they actually belong to someone else. She reveals with a bright smile that the cookies were originally intended for the Duke himself. Making good on her plan, Lowena promptly arrives at the Duke's office with a cheerful cookie delivery. The Duke looks up from his work, unsurprised by her late-night visit, as she offers him snacks. She playfully reminds him that it's almost bedtime, cheekily threatening that his precious story time will be delayed if he doesn't hurry up and finish his work for the night. His stern expression softens into a slight smile as he tells her to come in and wait. With Lowena and Dante now quietly settled in his office, the Duke resumes his business meeting, returning to the serious topic of Donna Devon and a certain business model. Munching on her cookie, Lowena recognizes the name, picturing the dramatic girl she encountered earlier. The aide explains that Donna Devon was secretly supposed to model for Motier's new brand, but the incident with Lowena inadvertently exposed this confidential plan to them. The Duke's question reveals the new brand is called Eden, but this only creates a bigger problem, since Motier is already a well-established clothing company. The aide reveals the dire situation. The concept, target audience, and even the release date for their new brand directly overlap with Motier's launch, creating a huge conflict. He concludes grimly that as newcomers to the market, they simply stand no chance against them. The Duke shuts down the idea of a delay, his expression hardening, as he explains that signed contracts with retailers make changing the timing impossible now. While they debate impossible solutions, Lowena overhears the brand name Eden, and a crucial piece of information from the novel she read suddenly clicks into place in her mind. She realizes with a jolt of panic that this business crisis is the exact moment from the original story where Duke Seymour and the male lead become mortal enemies. A chilling memory from the book surfaces, a future where a furious Seymour confronts Valentin, accusing him of ruining everything since the disastrous launch of the brand called Eden. The man in question is Valentin Motier, a key figure from the novel's original plotline. Lowena recalls that Valentin is the head of the powerful Motier family, a house equal in status to the Somersets, and more importantly, the real male lead of the original novel. Their intense rivalry, as the story goes, begins with the disastrous launch of the brand Eden. In the original timeline, while Seymour was just starting his business, the already established Valentin won the Empress's favor with his experience, becoming wildly popular among the noble women of the empire. This meant that in the original story, Duke Seymour's new fashion brand was destined to fail miserably. However, Lowena flashes a determined smile filled with confidence that this time will be different, all because she is here now to change the course of his tragic fate. The scene shifts to a photo shoot where a stylist praises Lowena's flawless appearance, revealing they've even secured a shoot with the famous photographer Aubert as proof of their success. The photographer calls for a quick break, but Lowena knows they can't afford to relax just yet. She understands that simply finishing the photo shoot won't be enough to guarantee success for the Duke's brand. She racks her brain, desperately trying to come up with a more certain plan than a simple photo shoot. She knows that if she doesn't come up with a plan soon, Seymour's business will fail again. She imagines him falling deep into debt, becoming a miserable workaholic zombie forever chained to his desk. The consequences are dire for her too. If his business fails, she'll never get the cure she needs, a grim fate she absolutely refuses to accept while she can still fight. Her frantic thoughts are suddenly interrupted by an angry shout from nearby, drawing her immediate attention. A well-dressed man angrily confronts another, accusing him of daring to touch his artistic work. He grabs the man by his collar, mocking him before escalating his baseless accusation to attempted theft. Peeking around the corner, Lowena sees the man as being falsely accused, an injustice that reminds her of her past and shocks her to see from grown adults. Seeing that the man is in trouble and unable to properly defend himself, she decides to step in. She runs out from her hiding spot, loudly calling them out as Aubert's assistants and claiming their boss is furious. Startled by the sudden appearance of a child, the men are completely caught off guard by her urgent warning. Her quick thinking works as the assistants flee, and she mentally apologizes for using Aubert's name. With the bullies gone, she approaches the man she saved, who gratefully thanks her for the help. He recognizes her as the model from earlier, and she confirms, asking if he works on the estate. She then spots a crumpled paper on the ground, picking it up and asking if it's his. Her eyes widen in absolute shock as she unfolds the paper, looking at the incredible drawing within. He shyly tries to downplay his work, but she asks if he is an artist, which he confesses he hopes to be one day. A brilliant idea sparks in her mind. She realizes this talented artist is the key she needs to beat Valentin's brand, a perfect solution to her problem. And so, with a new, unexpected ally by her side, Lowena's plan to rewrite the future truly begins. The man is flustered by her offer, but Lowena has found her answer: the way to beat Valentin's brand. He confirms the drawing is a quick sketch of her he made during a short break. Lowena is amazed by the incredible quality of the sketch, complimenting how well done it is, which makes the artist blush with embarrassment. She's fascinated that out of all her outfits, he chose to draw her simple pajamas, something she wears every day without a second thought, sparking a new idea. She recalls from her past life that these modest pajamas are destined to become a massive fashion trend in a few years, known as the, quote, pajama dress, perfectly fitting the current movement towards comfort. She realizes this is the perfect strategy. They're simply bringing forward a guaranteed trend, which means Seymour won't lose and will gain the prestigious image of a true trendsetter. The incredible skill level of the drawing done so quickly is undeniable proof of his amazing talent. With her plan solidifying, she turns to the talented artist and directly asks for his name. As the wind gently blows through his hair, the light catches his features, and he shyly introduces himself to her with a single name: David. Lowena is completely thunderstruck by his name, while David panics about his bangs being messed up. She realizes it all makes sense. His absurd, natural talent and surreal beauty mean he's the guy who is destined to burst onto the art scene in just a few years. She remembers him clearly from the novel, the genius, handsome artist, David Janea. There is absolutely no doubt in her mind that this is the very same person. She recalls that he becomes famous for his unusual black and white drawing style, which perfectly suits her plan since the chemise dresses she wants to promote are mostly white anyway. David's concerned voice snaps her out of her intense internal monologue, asking if she's feeling all right. She can't believe someone with his level of talent is just doing odd jobs. She knows he'll become famous eventually, but it's a shame to let that talent go to waste. Having made her decision, she approaches him directly, reminding him of his dream to be an artist. She asks if he'd take a job if someone offered, but his confidence is low, questioning who'd hire him. With a brilliant, confident smile, she declares that she will be the one to hire him, determined to snatch him up before anyone else discovers his incredible, world-changing talent. Her smile radiates pure joy and confidence as she tells him to simply follow her lead. Back in his office, the Duke listens intently, summarizing her audacious plan to promote the new dress using only black and white flyers. Lowena beams from across the large desk, confirming the Duke's summary of her plan while David stands by nervously. The Duke's aide, Axel, slams his hand on the table, passionately correcting him that the idea isn't just not bad, it's absolutely perfect. Axel argues that the bold concept will create a central buzz, which is exactly what a new brand needs. He explains that the key is sticking in people's minds. They just need to get customers in the door once. His final point is simple. Since noblewomen won't skip petticoats, the practical chemise dresses are guaranteed to sell. Overwhelmed with admiration for her brilliant strategy, Axel declares Lady Lowina a genius and sweeps her into a celebratory hug, turning to the Duke for his final verdict on the matter. The other aide chimes in, admitting the plan is risky, but agrees it's better than doing nothing. After considering all the points, Duke Seymour looks down at the proposal and gives his simple, decisive agreement. With the decision made, Lowena enthusiastically grabs David's hand, ready to put their new plan into action. The Duke issues his final orders, instructing them to focus their energy on the flyers, have David handle all the designs, and ensure the Somerset name is listed as an official sponsor. Seymour's new brand, named White Rose, became an immediate and overwhelming success right from its initial launch. Crowds of curious nobles immediately began to gather, their attention captured by the mysterious new flyers posted around the city. The flyers quickly became the talk of the town, with everyone whispering about the daring new pajama dress from White Rose. The concept was undeniably scandalous to some, but the controversy only fueled the fire, as conservative nobles gossiped endlessly about the audacity of wearing underwear in public. However, everyone agreed the child in the picture was adorable, and the black and white style gave it an innocent feel, effectively turning all the negative gossip into free publicity. The bold move of turning undergarments into a dress made everyone eager to talk, creating buzz no other brand could compete with. Feeling the pressure from White Rose's explosive popularity, the rival brand Motier began a smear campaign, releasing negative newspaper articles that attacked the new brand's quality. Instead of hiding, Duke Seymour confidently ordered an immediate public quality inspection, actively addressing the rumors head-on, which only served to prove White Rose's products were top quality. The final blow to their rivals came when the famous socialite, Countess Queensberry, began wearing the pajama dress at her exclusive tea parties, praising its comfort and style. With the backing of high society and widespread public interest, the chemise dress trend had officially begun. Lowena beams with pure joy, feeling an immense sense of relief as she celebrates the complete and total success of their ambitious plan. Since the successful launch of White Rose, Lowena finds herself skipping through the grand halls, feeling that every single day has been filled with pure, unadulterated happiness. Her life has changed dramatically. Now the servants all fawn over her, affectionately calling her their little genius. In another part of the estate, Lowena is looking over a new set of paints she requested. A woman suggests a book with lots of colors, and Lowena eagerly agrees to use that one. Nearby, two young, noble girls whisper excitedly amongst themselves, noticing the striking resemblance Lowena has to a certain someone. Lowena pauses, holding the book she just chose, and glances over her shoulder, curious about the noise. The girls can't contain their excitement, realizing she's the adorable model from the now famous White Rose flyer. Overcome with adoration, one of the girls gently touches Lowena's cheek, cooing that she is too cute to handle, confirming that her public identity is now widely recognized. Lowena hugs the book with a satisfied, cat-like smile, basking in the pleasant realization that praise and recognition now seem to follow her absolutely everywhere she goes. Even her relationship with Dante has improved. He now patiently helps her when she struggles with her studies. He leans over her book to explain a difficult problem, a clear sign of their new, supportive bond. Filled with optimism, she happily skips through the grand hall, confident that the Duke won't break down. This success means the cure for her illness will arrive faster, and escaping her fated death is just around the corner. She daydreams that the Duke must be feeling much better now, happily giving her all the credit. She even imagines that he will finally dote on her, just like he does his most trusted aides. Arriving at his study, she finds the door slightly ajar and peeks inside, her heart pounding with the hopeful expectation that he must be smiling from ear to ear. But the Duke isn't smiling. He looks up from his desk with a tired, serious expression. He lets out a heavy sigh, removing his glasses while staring at a document, his face etched with a profound exhaustion that completely shatters her hopeful expectations. Lowena stares in horror as a jolt of panic courses through her. He looks even worse than before, and she has no idea what could have possibly gone wrong. Her perfect plan had a fatal flaw. Just when everything seemed perfect, a new, unforeseen disaster has struck the Duke, leaving Lowena completely terrified. Peeking into the office, she's horrified to see the Duke's expression is even worse than before, a fact she simply can't comprehend after their recent success. She stares at the door, her mind racing as she desperately tries to figure out what could have possibly happened. Her spying is cut short when the Duke, with a weary but gentle tone, calls her into the room. Inside, a man she doesn't recognize immediately identifies her as the famous face of the White Rose brand. With a bright smile, Lowena politely introduces herself, and then asks the well-dressed stranger for his name. The man smoothly introduces himself as Jaden Dormer, a name that immediately rings a bell for Lowena. Her memory flashes back to the novel. She remembers that Jaden Dormer was briefly mentioned in the story. The full horrifying memory returns. Jaden Dormer was the very scammer who ran off with all the Duke's money. She realizes his position as assistant director is the perfect cover to commit his crime, and she suspects he is the true reason for the Duke's terrible mood. Jaden politely excuses himself, reminding the Duke to review the documents he just delivered before he departs. The mention of documents immediately piques Lowena's suspicion as the Duke curtly dismisses the mysterious man. Convinced the document is full of bad news from a bad guy, she peeks over the desk, trying to decipher the upside-down text to understand the source of the Duke's distress. Her eyes focus on a single name signed on the official-looking document, Quentin Graham. The name sends a chill down her spine as she recognizes it as the Duke's deceased older brother. She gasps in shock, but before she can process it, the Duke's hand slams down, covering the document. He stands over her with a stern expression, telling her this isn't for children to see. Dismissing her completely, he tells her to return at bedtime, effectively kicking her out of his office. Now outside the closed doors, she racks her brain, certain the document is the source of his distress, but she still can't figure out the exact reason why it upset him so much. Remembering he told her to come back at bedtime, a new resolve hardens her expression. If he won't tell her willingly, she has no choice but to use that method to find out. She readies her secret plan. Putting her plan into motion, Lowena bursts into Dante's room, startling him as he reads. Ignoring his question about her homework, she rushes to his side, urgently asking for his allegiance. Her eyes sparkle with intensity. He's completely taken aback now. Confused by her sudden fervor, Dante hesitantly agrees that of course he is on her side. With his confirmation secured, she leans in close, taking his hands as she asks for his help. With her most important ally secured, Lowena's counter-operation against the mysterious new threat officially begins. Meanwhile, back in the Duke's study, the atmosphere is heavy with tension as night falls, the rustling of papers being the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. The mysterious document lies on his desk, its contents holding the key to his sudden despair. The Duke stares at the paper in disbelief, the full weight of the situation crashing down on him as he realizes his late brother Quentin had accrued an immense, hidden debt. The Duke closes his eyes, pressing his fingers to his temple, overwhelmed by the shocking revelation. The Duke's thoughts drift back to the man at the center of this crisis, Quentin Graham. He remembers Quentin not just as a name on a debt notice, but as his older brother and, more importantly, as Dante's father, a figure who should have been a pillar of the family. He recalls how good a man his brother seemed to be, always gently chiding him for working too hard. In his memories, Quentin's voice is filled with concern, wishing Seymour would enjoy his leisure time more. His brother always offered unwavering support, yet tempered it with worry that Seymour would become too exhausted, a kindness that now feels like a cruel, painful irony. He was a kind person who always approached the blunt, serious Seymour with a warm and welcoming smile. But now, the Duke is forced to wonder who could have ever known the dark secret hidden behind that smile. The truth was revealed only after Quentin's death. He had been running several businesses that failed due to sudden investor withdrawals, leaving behind a mountain of debt that Seymour has now inherited along with the title. Slumped over his desk in utter defeat, the Duke is tormented by one question: why his brother never said anything before the debt grew to this impossible, soul-crushing magnitude. He can't believe the head of the family could be so irresponsible, but he sighs, feeling pathetic for having such thoughts about a man who is already gone. He believes he can handle the debt, but the real challenge is figuring out how to explain his father's failure to Dante. Overwhelmed by the crushing weight of it all, he lets out another heavy sigh, burying his face in his hands. On difficult days like this, he finds his thoughts drifting back to a cherished memory of someone special from his past. A memory of a woman with flowing blonde hair materializes, her bright smile radiant as she calls out his name, Rose. Soft footsteps approach his door. Lowina appears at his door, holding a book with a bright smile, arriving for their promised bedtime story. The Duke looks up from his papers, surprised by her sudden appearance, her bright presence a stark contrast to his dark mood. She beams, holding up the book and happily announcing that it is time for their nightly routine as promised. He remembers their promise, and she assures him that he'll enjoy the fairy tale she chose for tonight. As they leave the office, the Duke makes a lighthearted comment, telling her not to hide any cookies. Looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes, Lowena earnestly insists that she didn't hide any cookies today. Her eyes gleam with hidden intent as she thinks to herself that by cookies, she really means the documents containing the Duke's secret, a plan she must now enact. The Duke leads the way upstairs for their story time, reminding her to watch her step, completely unaware of her secret mission. Meanwhile, Dante waits alone in his room, the first part of Lowena's secret operation now resting on his shoulders. Following her strange instructions, he cautiously takes a stack of papers from a hidden spot in his room. Holding the documents, Dante is filled with a deep sense of confusion and conflict, questioning why he is going along with Lowena's bizarre and secretive request without any explanation. Despite his hesitation, Dante has committed to helping Lowena, setting in motion their first covert operation together. Dante is completely bewildered by her proposal, struggling to understand why she wants him to steal his uncle's documents. Lowena beams with a bright, innocent smile, enthusiastically confirming his understanding of her very illegal request. She simplifies the plan for him, insisting it's not that hard to just steal, copy, and return them. She reassures him that even a perfect copy will be enough, explaining that it will reveal why the Duke is so distressed and help them stop the scammer's scheme before it's too late. Despite her passionate plea, Dante pulls his hand away, rejecting her outrageous proposal with a firm and absolute no. He tells her plainly that if she wants to do it, she should do it herself and not drag him into it. His swift rejection leaves her completely crestfallen, her eyes welling up with tears as she realizes he didn't even consider it, despite how close she thought they had become. Seeing her crestfallen expression, Dante immediately begins to second-guess his harsh response, wondering if he was too cold to her. He quickly reaffirms his stance, believing that wrong is still wrong, and he tries to gently explain to her that she's not supposed to meddle in adult matters like this. Unwilling to accept his refusal, Lowena throws a tantrum, demanding that he do it for her. She dramatically throws herself onto the couch, refusing to get up until he agrees to her plan. She insists it's only a few pages, and that she can't possibly do it without his help. Dante remains unmoved by her theatrics, crossing his arms and telling her that her forced attempt won't work. Lowena changes tactics, reminding him of his promise to be on her side and appealing to his own curiosity about the document, a trick that finally makes him relent and ask what it is. Now that she has his attention, she explains that she didn't see the entire document, but she definitely saw a name. She reveals the name she saw so clearly on the document, Quentin Graham, a name that stuns Dante. Dante is shocked, questioning if that was really his father's name, and she insists it was there. The information puzzles him. He'd always heard his father died suddenly without even leaving a will. Sensing his doubt, Lowena's eyes sparkle as she confirms the information is real, gently questioning his trust. After a long, conflicted sigh, Dante finally makes his decision, unable to ignore the plea in her eyes. He reluctantly agrees to help, telling her to get up, and Lowena explodes with joy, declaring him the best. And that brings the story back to the present, under the light of a full moon as their secret plan unfolds. Huddled under the covers, Dante asks where the Duke is, and Lowena complains he gave her a thorough scolding with a boring fairy tale before finally falling asleep. Dante reveals the copied documents, noting there wasn't as much as he expected, earning high praise from Lowena. Lowena leans in to examine the papers, but she immediately struggles to read the complex legal terminology written on them. Dante teases her, offering to read it for her if she can't, and she eagerly tells him to go ahead. He simplifies the text, explaining that it's a record detailing how inheritance is distributed to family members of other houses. The document reveals a shocking truth. Just 2 weeks before his accidental death, Quentin was researching inheritance law, specifically how much of the family's inheritance would go to his brother, Seymour. He was also investigating how inheritance rights could be voided, all while their father was gravely ill and Quentin himself was drowning in debt from repeated business failures. The document's implications are chilling. Quentin's research can be interpreted in 2 ways. He was either trying to find out how much inheritance he would receive, or he was plotting to steal Seymour's inheritance for himself. It all clicks into place for Lowena. This document is the undeniable reason the Duke's mood soured so dramatically. She recalls that in the original story, Seymour hated Quentin so much that he was constantly described as hating Dante simply because he was Quentin's son, a deep-seated resentment that defined his character. Lowena looks over at Dante, a new thought forming in her mind as she processes this information. She realizes that right now, before the original story even begins, their relationship doesn't seem that bad. This raises a crucial question: what happened between them before the story started? Whatever it was, Seymour's fundamental issues were somehow resolved before he ever met the original female lead. She deduces that this document is the cause. Jaden must have known about it and deliberately handed it over to sow distrust within the family and bring the company down from the inside. Lying in bed, Lowena's determination hardens. She vows to uncover all of Jaden's schemes, refusing to let him get his way and promising to protect the Duke and Dante no matter what. Dante confirms that was all the information contained in the documents they copied from the Duke's office. As Lowena processes the information, she suddenly notices that Dante's expression has become really dark and troubled. Lowena panics, realizing she's just told Dante that his own father planned something terrible. She regrets asking for his help now that she knows the sensitive nature of the content. She nervously tries to find the right words to say, unsure how to comfort him now. Dante tells her not to worry, stating with a grim determination that it's not something to be comforted over. As his son, he has to take responsibility for his father's actions. Lowena listens, her expression softening with empathy as she understands that the truth still hurts him deeply. Dante continues, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes, declaring that if he is to be the heir, then his father's sins are now his own to carry forward. He turns away, burying his face in his pillow, overwhelmed by the heavy burden he's just accepted. Lowina watches him with deep concern, wishing the young boy wouldn't carry such a heavy burden. Lowina decides to change the subject, turning down the lantern's light and offering to tell him a secret. Lying beside him in the dark, she whispers her secret theory. The person who brought the documents is a really bad guy, which means the documents themselves are probably fake. She playfully pulls the covers over them, admitting with a sly smile that they could be real, too. Dante manages a small smile, admitting he just didn't want her to feel too upset by the heavy news. Dante looks at her with sudden seriousness, reminding her not to forget the promise she made to him, that they are on the same side, no matter what happens between their families. Touched by his words, she promises she won't forget, though she wonders why he brought it up so suddenly. He blinks slowly, his gaze unwavering as he reaffirms his commitment to their shared promise and alliance. Their hands clasp together as she makes her own promise, determined not to let Dante get hurt. She reflects on their bond, realizing he's her first true friend in this new life. For his sake, she vows to uncover the truth, no matter what it takes to protect him. The scene shifts to the Duke's office, where he's meeting with a man about a specific investigation. The man confirms the secretary's suspicions were correct, revealing that Jaden Dormer, the man who delivered the document, used to be Quentin's personal aide, a shocking and damning connection. The investigator explains that Jaden's stories sounded suspicious, prompting him to investigate and uncover these documents. The Duke looks over the papers, his brow furrowed as he considers the man's words about Jaden's suspicious story. As the Duke examines the papers, his eyes widen slightly in dawning comprehension, the pieces of a puzzle he never knew existed starting to click into place before him. The document is a bond, a clear record of money borrowed from the Hayworth family, but the most shocking part is the two signatures at the bottom, Quentin's and Rose's. The implication sends his mind reeling. Quentin borrowed money from Rose, a woman he was supposed to have no connection with, forcing him to question if they were secretly close. He clutches the papers, his mind in turmoil as this new evidence directly contradicts everything he thought he knew. He had always been so certain that the two had no contact. Across the desk, Jaden Dormer stands silently, his presence looming over the office like a patient predator. A slow, knowing smirk spreads across his face, the confident expression of a man whose carefully laid trap has just been sprung, sowing the exact seeds of chaos he intended. With the Duke's past thrown into question and a villain's scheme revealed, the stage is set for a new, dangerous conflict. The Duke stares at a debt certificate bearing the handwritten signatures of his brother Quentin and his wife Rose, a document he never knew existed, as he believed the two had never even met privately. The chilling implication becomes clear. This document is undeniable proof that Rose met his older brother Quentin in secret without ever telling him, her own husband, about their clandestine meeting. A closer look reveals another suspicious detail. The debt is not registered under Rose's personal name, but under the official name of the Hayworth family, a clever and deliberate distinction. The investigator explains that by registering the loan this way, it becomes a debt of the entire Hayworth family rather than a personal one, a clever trick to ensure it wouldn't be discovered easily. The more he examines the evidence, the clearer the painful truth becomes. Rose, the woman he loved and trusted, was deceiving him the entire time, hiding a secret life behind her gentle smile. He realizes with bitter regret that he was so focused on work that he didn't notice this deception for an entire year, a truth that should have been exposed to him long, long ago. He pinches the bridge of his nose, overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the ridiculous situation he now finds himself in. The weight of his new reality crashes down on him. He is now forced to suspect an affair between his own wife and his brother, two people who are now dead and unable to answer for their actions. The investigator cautions him, reminding the Duke not to jump to conclusions based on such limited evidence. The Duke gives a final order, telling the man to ensure his own secretary keeps his mouth shut. The man confirms he understands and promises to report back if he uncovers any new information. He pauses at the door, offering a final, seemingly sincere word of concern to the troubled Duke. With a look of polite sympathy, he advises the Duke to try not to worry too much. As he steps out of the office, another aide greets him, addressing him by his official title, Assistant Director. The aide asks if he has finished his business, and the Assistant Director confirms he is now leaving. After a polite farewell from the aide, the Assistant Director walks away with a confident stride. The moment he's alone, his respectful facade vanishes, replaced by a cold, contemptuous smirk as he internally mocks the Duke, revealing his true, treacherous intentions to the audience. With the villain's identity and scheme now clear, a new chapter of deception and danger begins. The man is formally identified as Jaden Dormer, who was originally an executive at a logistics company on the verge of bankruptcy before joining the Duke's enterprise. After the Hayworth family acquired his failing company, he was considered a lucky man, rising all the way to the prominent and powerful position of assistant director within their new enterprise. Jaden arrives at a residence, his expression grim as he confirms this is the place where his target lives. While some might call his life a success, two menacing figures wait for him outside, determined to make him sign a promissory note, no matter what it takes to corner him. However, the public perception of his successful life was a complete facade. The reality was entirely different. The men curse his name, calling him a damned gambling bastard as he hides in the shadows. The truth is that Jaden Dormer was a hopeless gambling addict, a man with a sinister grin who was buried under a mountain of massive, unpayable debt he had accrued over time. He curses under his breath, realizing the loan sharks have already tracked him down to his house. A nervous sweat beads on his brow as he tries to maintain a calm facade, his mind racing. He tries to reassure himself, believing that it's fine and that he just needs to endure for a few more days. As he flees, he internally apologizes to Seymour Somerset, telling himself that he feels bad but has no choice if he wants to survive this desperate, life-threatening situation. He believes that, in just a few days, his grand scheme will come to fruition and the entire company will finally be his. His entire treacherous plan was devised only a few months ago, born from a moment of pure, unadulterated desperation. A flashback reveals the catalyst for his downfall. He was winning a high-stakes card game until an unexpected card appeared, turning his victory into a devastating loss. In a blind panic, he realized the money he had just lost was company funds, a debt so massive that even selling his house wouldn't be enough to cover the staggering loss. Just as he was spiraling into despair, an aide announced that the new secretary had arrived for their meeting. The new secretary, a polite man named Peter, formally introduces himself to Jaden, looking forward to working with him. Peter glances around the salon. The new secretary makes some idle small talk, asking Jaden if he comes to this particular salon often. Peter reveals that someone he used to serve often held secret meetings here, a piece of information that immediately piques Jaden's interest, prompting him to ask about Peter's previous background. Peter discloses that he was the personal secretary to Duke Quentin of the Somerset ducal house. A wicked smile spreads across Jaden's face as he realizes this is it, the perfect opportunity. Jaden's plan is simple but devastating. Use family history and love affairs to ruin the Duke's reputation. If Seymour's image is damaged, his dismissal will be swift, allowing Jaden to take his place. He reasons that once the Duke is gone, it's only natural for him, the assistant director, to step in and take his place. His manipulative operation to plant the seeds of doubt in the Duke's mind was, from his perspective, quite successful. Jaden watches with satisfaction as the Duke is visibly shaken by just a few sheets of carefully selected paper. He smirks, confident that even the success of White Rose won't be enough to save the Duke now. Jaden's final thought is a malicious command for Seymour to doubt his dead family even more, ensuring his mental downfall. The seeds of discord have been planted, and now the poison begins to spread throughout high society. Jaden's scheme is already bearing fruit as rumors begin to circulate among the nobles, starting with a simple, scandalous question. The gossip spreads like wildfire. They say the director is secretly meeting a married woman, a rumor that someone claims was witnessed by multiple people at a salon known for secret meetings. The women confirm the location is a known secret rendezvous spot, which immediately leads to the next logical question: who is the mysterious woman? The women whisper the name of the mysterious woman, the famous Lady Winslet, Katarina Winslet, as Jaden watches intently from the top of the stairs, his plan unfolding perfectly. The rumor specifies that she is the incredibly beautiful and famous actress who married a well-known businessman just 3 years ago, adding another layer of scandal to the alleged affair. The women continue their excited chatter, questioning his choice and noting how quickly he seems to have forgotten his supposedly beloved late wife, just as Jaden expected. Jaden smoothly approaches the gossiping women, feigning ignorance as he asks what they are talking about, knowing full well that his rumors are taking root and Seymour's reputation is crumbling. Caught in the act, the women gasp, startled by the assistant director's sudden appearance, and they stammer, unable to form a coherent sentence as they're confronted by their superior. Jaden feigns a thoughtful expression, remarking that while the director has good taste, he should be more careful, subtly validating their gossip and fanning the flames of the rumor. His words shock them. As Jaden walks away, his feigned confirmation works perfectly, and the women begin to whisper amongst themselves that the scandalous rumor must really be true after all. He internally encourages them to keep talking as much as they like, marveling at how quickly the small, poisonous rumor he dropped has managed to spread throughout high society. He smirks, knowing that a boss's private life is the easiest and juiciest topic for gossip. All he has to do now is simply let them keep talking and watch the chaos unfold. He then puts on a show of authority, telling them to talk more moderately and get back to work. Suddenly, a cheerful child's voice cuts through the air, startling both Jaden and the gossiping women. Lowena appears with pigtails and a bright, innocent smile, asking the group if they know Lady Winslet too. She proudly declares that Lady Winslet is her teacher, a statement that completely derails Jaden's carefully crafted rumor. Jaden's confident smirk falters, replaced by a look of genuine confusion and annoyance as this unexpected child throws a wrench in his plans. He glances around, his mind racing as he tries to figure out where this little kid came from so suddenly. With a single, innocent statement, Lowina has completely upended Jaden's scheme, leaving the villain momentarily stunned and speechless. With a bright and innocent smile, Lowina happily announces to the entire room that Madame Winslet is her teacher. She feels vindicated for insisting on the tour, but wonders why her teacher was the target, recalling that vicious rumors about the Duke had been spreading. Lowina smirks, thinking directly at Jaden that he picked the wrong day for his schemes, vowing he won't succeed. The onlookers are completely baffled by this revelation, questioning who this child is, until someone recognizes her as Lowena Wheatfield, the famous model. Another person connects the dots, remembering she's the girl the Duke recently adopted as his heir, which Lowena confirms with a radiant smile. Seeking clarity, one of the ladies asks Lowena to confirm her statement, and the girl happily explains the Duke hired Madame Winslet. Lowena clarifies that the Duke didn't choose her personally. It was a recommendation, and Madame Winslet gave the offer serious thought before agreeing to be her tutor. She recalls begging to visit the bustling district, but the Duke suggested a quieter place so Madame Winslet wouldn't get tired, sending his nephew Dante with them instead. The ladies whisper amongst themselves, realizing Lowena's innocent account is completely different from what they heard, questioning how such a vicious rumor started. The onlookers agree, realizing the Duke wouldn't bring a child to a secret rendezvous, thus disproving the affair. Jaden forces a smile, dismissing the topic as a private ducal matter, all while internally questioning what this meddling little brat is scheming to do. He realizes that if this continues, the Duke will be in a difficult position, and he can't allow her to roam freely, fearing his entire plan will be ruined. Jaden tells Lowena she has to leave, desperately thinking that he cannot let things fall apart now. Attempting to regain control, Jaden dismisses the crowd, telling everyone to go back inside because the company is getting too noisy. Lowena sees right through his act, convinced that he was deliberately trying to slander the Duke and is now trying to kick her out for correcting him. Refusing to be silenced, Lowena points directly at Jaden, declaring she has something to tell him and won't be backing down quietly. Jaden is momentarily confused, asking if she means him, and Lowena confirms that there were people outside looking specifically for him. She recounts hearing them shout his full name, calling him a bastard for not paying his interest, and his face pales as he realizes with horror, debt collectors. Jaden frantically denies knowing anything, but Lowena loudly refutes him, insisting they definitely said his name for everyone to hear. The ladies whisper in disbelief, shocked that debt collectors would come all the way to the company for the assistant director. Their perception of Jaden shatters, as they never expected the vice president to be involved in such shady dealings. While the women try to quiet each other, Jaden panics internally, a strained grin on his face as he realizes this wasn't how his plan was supposed to go. Lowena innocently urges him to check for the men, noting with satisfaction that he's so upset he is even trembling. Lowena knows that the moment Jaden gets shaken by her words like this, everything he says begins to lose its power. She smiles confidently, knowing that if he can't even refute a child's simple words, nobody in the room will believe him. He grits his teeth furiously. Defeated, he turns away. As he walks away, the onlookers realize that his earlier accusations were likely just another groundless rumor. The crowd concludes that a child wouldn't lie about something so specific. They have all started to doubt Jaden completely. With her job done, Lowena smiles, deciding it's time to go meet the real Duke. The chapter concludes here. Now inside, Lowena wanders through the grand hallway, looking around and wondering where the Duke could be. Suddenly, she spots him. She runs towards him, calling out his name, and the Duke turns, surprised to see Lowena there. Duke Seymour looks down at her with a stern expression, asking what brings her all the way to the company. Beaming, she explains that she came to thank him for personally choosing her new private tutor. Lowena gives a formal, polite bow as Dante watches from the side, finding the entire scene incredibly adorable. The Duke seems slightly flustered, telling her she could have just waited until he returned to the estate. He then gently pats her head, acknowledging that she went out of her way just to come see him. Lowena thinks to herself that thanking him wasn't the only reason she came to the company. She notices the Duke's complexion looks even worse than before, making her wonder if Jaden has already done something to upset him. As she worries about Jaden's schemes, the Duke interrupts her thoughts by offering to have some cake prepared. The offer of cake immediately distracts her, and she decides to eat first and think later, her face lighting up with excitement. In a private room, Lowena enjoys the cake, happily exclaiming to the Duke how delicious it is. The Duke watches her with an unreadable expression as he simply asks if she's enjoying the cake. She enthusiastically confirms how good it is, her cheeks stuffed full, as he gently tells her to finish eating before talking. With renewed determination, she realizes that at times like this, she needs to stay by the Duke's side even more, using the cake to gather her strength. After finishing her bite, she suddenly stands up and tells the Duke not to worry about anything. She proudly declares that because she is here with him now, no matter what happens, everything is going to be fine. The Duke is confused by her sudden declaration, but Lowena silently vows to protect him from now on. Her motivation is simple. The Duke needs to be safe so he can continue bringing her life-saving medicine. Later, during her art lesson, Madame Winslet instructs her to draw anything she likes based on what they've learned, giving her complete creative freedom. Lowena agrees and begins to draw. As she sketches, she recalls how fiercely Jaden glared at her yesterday, admitting to herself it was a little scary. She concludes that the other rumors she overheard at the company must also be related to Jaden, wondering just how many malicious lies he spread. She knows she blocked his plan this time, but if Jaden succeeds, the company will collapse, and Quentin's debts completely ruin the family. In that future, Seymour and Dante's relationship would deteriorate, and driven into a corner, the Duke would eventually collapse, just like in the original story. The thought alone is terrifying, strengthening her resolve to stop Jaden from spreading any more rumors. So for now, she focuses on her current task, and, with a final touch, declares her drawing is all done. She proudly presents her finished drawing to Madame Winslet, who praises her for how carefully she worked on it. With a bright smile, Lowena announces she wants to show the drawing to the Duke, deciding she must go keep watch herself. He slams his fist down. Meanwhile, back in his office, Jaden collapses over his desk, seething with pure rage and frustration. He fumes over Lowena's interference, realizing that thanks to her, a new rumor is spreading that he's being chased by debt collectors. His eyes darken with malice as he grips his desk, vowing that he will bring her down right along with Duke Seymour. His dark intentions fester. The chapter comes to a close. The new chapter opens. Jaden seethes, remembering his fury at Lowena's interference and his vow to bring her down along with Seymour. He clenches his fist, frustrated, as he reflects on how much time has passed since his plans went awry. Slumped over his desk in his dark office, he bitterly thinks that ever since that brat started coming to the company, nothing has gone right for him. The rumors he painstakingly spread about the Duke have stopped circulating, and instead, Lowena is drawing all the positive attention. Meanwhile, Lowena happily makes a cookie delivery to the office staff, telling them the Duke wanted her to share them. The employees observe how lively she is compared to the CEO, commenting on how cute she is and how good the Duke is with kids. Jaden realizes with growing fury that his rumors aren't spreading and the Duke's reputation is actually improving, while he's the one who got beaten up. He recalls the painful beating, remembering the warning that he was lucky it ended with just that. The debt collectors had threatened him, warning that the next time they came, he had better have the money properly prepared. The collectors had given him a grim warning about what would happen if he failed to pay up. Jaden realizes he can't put this off any longer and must get the money by next week, otherwise his plan to siphon funds would be for nothing. He blames Lowena for ruining everything, watching as she casually offers him a cookie, constantly getting in his way. Now that rumors of his debt are spreading, he knows he'll be the first one suspected if company funds go missing. He desperately needs a sharp move, a clever way to siphon off the money without drawing any suspicion from others. Then, a thought strikes him. To avoid suspicion, it just means he shouldn't be the one taking the money. A sinister smile spreads across his face as a new, wicked idea forms. He can just frame Duke Seymour. He pulls out forged ledgers he made for his escape, realizing they're the perfect bait to divert everyone's attention. He acknowledges his own reputation is damaged by the debt rumors, but everyone also knows Seymour's brother is in financial trouble. He decides that if he's going down, he might as well try something drastic by publicly revealing the manipulated ledgers. Jaden paces, confident the executives will suspect Seymour before him due to his brother's debts. He believes if his plan goes well, he can finally bring the Duke down. Jaden abruptly announces to his subordinate Peter that he's heading to the bank, taking the ledger with him. He gives Peter a confidential order to burn the blue book on his desk, ensuring no traces are left, but Peter seems hesitant about his previous task. Jaden snaps at him, telling him to finish his other work first and then deal with the book himself before storming off. Peter watches him leave, figuring Jaden won't be back for a while, and decides to organize documents first, saving the book for later. Suddenly, someone bumps into him. Peter is surprised to see Miss Lowina, who apologizes for getting lost and bumping into him while holding a book. He reassures her it's fine and asks what she's doing there since the Duke is out, showing concern for the bump on her forehead. Lowena beams, explaining that she came because she wanted to show the Duke the drawing she just made for him. Peter smiles and suggests a fun idea. She could leave the drawing in the Duke's office as a surprise. Peter points her down the corridor, telling her she should be able to find the Duke's office easily on her own. Lowena thanks him and happily skips off, while Peter watches her go with a thoughtful expression. Suddenly, he remembers the blue notebook she was holding when she bumped into him, realizing it looked strangely familiar. However, he quickly dismisses the thought, telling himself that it's just a common color for a book. The chapter ends ominously. Sometime later, the Duke finally returns from his business at the bank and finds Lowena. She looks up from her drawing with a massive smile, excitedly asking if he's already finished for the day. He asks what she was doing in the staff offices, and she proudly explains she was quietly drawing and also stopping nasty rumors about him from spreading. She then asks him with bright, hopeful eyes if he saw the special surprise she left on his desk. The Duke simply looks back at her with a confused expression, prompting Lowena to wonder why his reaction is so mild if he'd actually seen her drawing. Lowena clarifies she left her sketchbook on his desk, placing it right next to another notebook that looked exactly the same. Dante gently suggests she may have entered the wrong room, but Lowena insists she left it in a room that was open. He explains the CEO's office is always closed, meaning she probably went into the vice president's office by mistake, which is next door. A wave of horror washes over her as she realizes she left her drawing in that jerk's office, terrified that Jaden will see it. In a panic, she declares she'll get it right away, and the Duke calmly tells her to be careful not to trip. She rushes to Jaden's office and peeks inside, sighing in relief when she sees that there's no one there. With the coast clear, she quietly enters the room knowing she needs to grab her sketchbook and get out fast. She spots the book on his desk, relieved that it looks like Jaden hasn't seen it yet. Just as she grabs it, Dante calls out, asking if they should head back to the estate first, and she yells that she's coming right now. As she rushes out, she frantically pleads for them not to leave without her. She runs down the hall to catch up with them, happily calling out for the Duke. Back in Jaden's office, Peter finds the blue book Jaden told him to dispose of. He holds the book, unable to shake the persistent feeling that he has seen it somewhere before. He ultimately dismisses the thought, deciding it's none of his business as he turns to leave. Later that night, back at the magnificent Somerset ducal house, the moon hangs high in the sky, illuminating the grand estate. As they walk through the halls, the Duke asks Lowena if she brought the drawing she mentioned. She gushes that Teacher Winslet praised it, admitting she had originally planned it as a surprise. She proudly presents the open book, But instead of a drawing, it reveals a page filled with handwritten ledger entries and numbers. The Duke and Dante are left speechless, their faces hardening as they stare at the unexpected contents. Lowena starts to explain her drawing but stops, utterly confused, exclaiming, "What is this?" Lowena realizes this isn't her homework notebook, as the Duke and Dante stare intently at the ledger. The Duke takes the book, his voice low, as he asks where she found it. Lowena explains she got it from the vice president's office, mistaking it for her identical sketchbook. With a grave expression, the Duke calls out to Dante, who immediately understands the unspoken command. Clutching the damning evidence, the Duke's expression becomes cold and calculating, the dark flowers framing him hinting at the storm he is about to unleash on his enemies. Not long after that fateful night, a ledger was revealed, publicly claiming that Duke Seymour had embezzled the company's investment funds, plunging the ducal house into a new crisis. The Blue Book, presented as damning evidence, sat at the center of the tense executive meeting. The boardroom erupted with fury as executives questioned how this could happen, with one shouting that this is why he hated the idea of a noble buying the company. One man sneers, questioning if nobles even see them as human, viewing this as a chance to hire someone with proper qualifications. Jaden watches with a smug smile, thinking how pathetic Seymour looks for freezing up, and wonders what he'll do now. An executive slams his hands on the table, demanding an answer and directly asking if it's true he embezzled the investment funds. Duke Seymour remains perfectly composed, calmly looking at the accusers and stating with conviction that the claim is not true. Enraged by the denial, the executive jumps up, holding the ledger and demanding to know what this evidence is supposed to be. He insists the ledger clearly shows a huge sum withdrawn under the Duke's name, asking how they're supposed to believe him when the evidence is right there. As the executives demand an answer, the Duke finally speaks, calmly stating that condemning someone over such shoddy evidence is absurd. His voice drops to a lethal whisper, telling the executive to shut up before he tears that mouth of his apart, and the atmosphere turns chillingly cold. The executive flinches back, stunned. An icy silence descends upon the room as everyone feels the suffocating pressure emanating from the Duke. The Duke scoffs at the state of the world where people like them can strut around calling themselves executives, prompting an objection that he's going too far. He retorts that the only thing too far is their intelligence, questioning if he looks like he has any reason to embezzle funds as the head of two great houses. He asks if they truly think someone of his stature would be so desperate for a few coins that he would embezzle money, expressing his deep regret for ever trusting them. The other executives begin to whisper, conceding that the evidence against the Duke is indeed flimsy, and based solely on a single ledger. Another agrees, stating the CEO worked hard to save the company, while Jaden panics, realizing he's about to get dragged into the mess. He realizes with mounting dread that he has to somehow pull the mood of the room back to his side. He slams his fist down. Jaden interrupts, shouting that the Duke's words are meaningless sophistry because they already have clear evidence against him. The Duke calmly retorts that if Jaden can't prove his claims, then his own words are nothing but sophistry. Jaden grins maniacally, trying to rally the executives by questioning how they can trust and follow a smooth-talking con artist. He challenges the entire room, but the Duke simply notes that, while evidence has been found, the situation isn't settled. Jaden thinks to himself with smug confidence that he already got rid of the real ledger, wondering what they can possibly do. The Duke appears to concede, stating that if that's the case, then there's nothing else to be done, before calling for someone to come in. On cue, the door opens and Lowina enters the tense boardroom, politely excusing herself as she walks in. An executive asks who the child is, and Jaden recognizes her as Lowina, the White Rose model, wondering why the brat is here. The Duke confirms her identity to the room, and then gently places a hand on her shoulder, asking her to tell them her story. Lowina explains to the executives that she made a mistake and left her sketchbook in the vice president's room, so she went back to get it but accidentally brought back the wrong book. The Duke reveals the book Lowina brought is the real ledger, causing chaos among the executives, who now wonder why there are two different ledgers. Jaden panics, remembering he definitely told Peter to take care of that ledger, and questions why it's here, as an executive demands to know what the first ledger was. The Duke explains he checked both books, and the records are identical up to a certain point, but unlike Jaden's, this one contains no record of embezzling funds. Lowena cheerfully confirms she brought the ledger from the vice president's office, causing the executives to murmur in confusion. The crowd turns on Jaden, questioning why another ledger was found in his office and demanding an immediate explanation. The story flashes back. A few days earlier, the Duke had already learned from his sources that a ledger which should have been secured in the company's safe was inexplicably found in the vice president's office. Lowena had frantically apologized for bringing the book, confirming for the Duke that the rumors he heard were true. The Duke had explained to a confused Lowena that he already found it suspicious that the vice president was siphoning off company funds, but he lacked concrete proof to catch him. Now that they knew Jaden was secretly taking the ledger out, the Duke was certain he was plotting something significant. Lowena begins to understand the gravity of the situation she's just stumbled into. The Duke gently pats her head. He reassures her that she did nothing wrong, explaining it was fortunate he saw the ledger first, as it could have been dangerous if someone else had discovered it. The Duke reflects on the strange things he's heard about Jaden lately, now seeing the truth he was hiding and realizing the man must have been in quite a hurry. He correctly guessed that with his plan unraveling, Jaden would show his claws soon enough. Back in the present, Jaden screams for them to shut up. He frantically denies everything, claiming it's a setup and that he knows nothing about the ledger, demanding proof it even came from his office, as he has no reason to do such a thing. The Duke calmly states he didn't want to go this far, but tells Dante to bring them in. Dante obeys, opening the doors to reveal two unexpected guests, and Jaden's face fills with absolute terror as he realizes who they are. Dante confirms they are the ones who are waiting at the front gate, and Jaden stares in disbelief as his creditors walk into the room, sealing his fate. The Duke explains that outsiders have recently thrown the company into chaos, and it all traces back to the money Jaden embezzled. The creditors state they're just here to collect what they're owed, explaining it's been months since Jaden promised he could pay. The other creditor adds that Jaden promised he could use company checks starting today and even wrote them an IOU. They present the IOU, pointing out his name, Jaden Dormer, is written on it clear as day, providing irrefutable proof of his intent to use company funds for his personal debts. The Duke calmly explains that to use company checks, one needs the signature of the CEO position, not a personal signature. The Duke lists all the evidence, the circumstances, connections, the gambling debts that make no sense for his situation, the forged ledger, and now the IOU. He confronts Jaden directly, stating he meant to bring him down and seize the CEO's seat, asking if he has anything else to say. Jaden can only stammer, defeated, as the Duke declares there's no point in making excuses, and that the meeting is now over. Having completely dismantled Jaden's scheme, the Duke stands and hands the evidence to Dante, telling him he'll leave the rest to him. As the Duke walks past, Luina looks up from her spot by the door, innocently asking if the problem has been resolved. The Duke tells her it's done and they can go now. Lowena beams, happily concluding the problem is resolved. The Duke apologizes for her getting caught up in adults' business, but Lowena replies she was happy to help him. Jaden glares with pure hatred, his thoughts fixated on Lowena Wheatfield as the creditors. Demands echo in his mind, asking how he's going to pay them back. As the executives demand an explanation, Jaden's face contorts with rage, and he silently vows with burning intensity that he will not let this go. The chapter concludes ominously now. Lowena thought the case was successfully settled. Meanwhile, Dante is glad the matter wrapped up well, noting they avoided a disaster thanks to the young lady. The Duke agrees it's a relief, but Dante observes his expression still doesn't look good and asks if something is still worrying him. Eavesdropping, Lowena wonders why Seymour's condition shows no signs of improving even after Jaden was dealt with. Jaden was hauled away, and the money was returned, so she can't understand what is still making him anxious. Dante suddenly appears and startles her, questioning what she's doing there and accusing her of eavesdropping on his uncle's room. He covers her mouth, telling her not to listen, but Lowena panics, thinking this is a really important moment she can't miss. She pushes his hand away, demanding to know what he meant by his comment, leaving a confused Dante to wonder what's gotten into her. Inside, the Duke explains the problem is the information Jaden brought about Quentin, confirming it wasn't a lie. Dante asks if this means Quentin and the late madam truly had that kind of relationship. The Duke reluctantly states that they have to assume there was some kind of relationship between them. Lowena overhears this, shocked by the words, a certain relationship, between Quentin and Rose. Lowena's mind races, imagining a dramatic affair between the Duke's brother and his late wife, something straight out of an adult drama. Dante looks down, his voice filled with frustration as he tells her that he warned her not to listen to adult conversations so recklessly. Lowena tries to explain herself, but Dante simply bows his head, asking if she understands now why he tried to stop her. With a pained expression, he tells her there's a reason why adults hide things from children. Lowena notices his distress and asks if he's okay. He tells her not to get hurt anymore and to just go back to her room. Lowena is left reeling, wondering what she should do now that Dante looks so hurt. Tears well up in her eyes as a horrifying thought strikes her. If Dante and the Duke grow apart like this, then everything she's worked for will go back to square one. She collapses onto her bed, realizing with despair that she has unintentionally caused a massive accident by exposing the secret. She thrashes around on her bed in frustration, scolding herself for letting Dante get involved at that critical timing. She recalls how deeply pained Dante's face looked, realizing he is now in a situation where the relationship between his late father and aunt is being questioned, which must be incredibly hard for him. Lying in bed with a determined expression, she resolves that she has to find something that helps both of them. Lowena recalls that in the original novel, there wasn't much about Rose and Quentin. They were just minor characters mentioned only in Seymour's past. But then, a sudden realization strikes her with the force of a lightning bolt. She sits up abruptly, remembering there was another way to find answers, deciding she'll go to Rose's room. She remembers that in most families, the room of a deceased noble is either left empty or repurposed for other uses. However, the House of Somerset is peculiar because they haven't taken any action regarding that room. She recalls catching Hugo coming out of Rose's room once, and he explained it was because Seymour had never made a single mention of what to do with it. Hugo had confessed he wouldn't dare bring up the topic of the late Madame to his Grace, believing the Duke wasn't ready to accept any words on the matter yet. He had wondered if perhaps one day, when the Duke was mentally prepared, he would be the one to finally close that door himself. Lowena understood the reasoning, but she recalled the view of Rose's room she glimpsed then was strange. The door was always open as if the owner had just stepped out, and the furniture was neatly organized without a speck of dust, yet the items were cluttered as if recently used. The entire room was preserved with such care that it felt as if the Duchess, Rose, was still alive and breathing within the walls of the house, her presence lingering in the air. Stealing her nerves, Lowena decides to just take a quick peek inside the mysterious room and then leave immediately. She reasons that, since the door is always open, she can feign getting lost if caught, and who knows, she might luckily find something important inside. As she pushes the door open, she's left breathless by what she discovers inside the room. The new chapter begins. After frantically searching the entire room, from the bed to the vanity, Lowena panics, realizing there's really nothing there. The only thing of note she could find in the entire room was a single drawer with a peculiar rose-shaped lock. She couldn't find the key anywhere in the room. Her intuition screamed that the answer was inside that drawer, but she couldn't look, prompting someone to ask why she looked so gloomy. Startled, Lowena realizes she'd been so focused on the lock all day that she completely forgot she was having tea with the Dowager lady. The Dowager lady explains she called her to praise her after hearing good things from Mrs. Winslet, but she's concerned, asking why Lowena keeps sighing like an old person. The Dowager lady teases that she'll clear the snacks away. Lowena immediately panics, insisting she's perfectly fine and ready to eat. While Lowena enjoys the delicious snacks, the Dowager lady smiles and says she heard Lowena was a great help to Seymour. Lowena humbly insists it was nothing much. The Dowager lady smiles knowingly while smelling a yellow rose, explaining that a single gold coin holds a different value for every person, and commends her for her actions. She continues, explaining people also have different values for others. While speaking, she cuts thorns from a rose, symbolizing that it's important to cut what needs to be cut and accept what must be accepted. She adds that reminiscing is the same. The first time is always the hardest. You can only do it because you know there is no turning back from the past. The Dowager lady explains that acceptance makes things easier. Lowena then asks if the Dowager lady also had a difficult first time. The Dowager lady confirms there was. She then surprises Lowena by asking if Lowena herself hadn't already done it for her. Lowena is confused. The Dowager lady says it's hard to understand now, but promises she will one day. Changing the subject, the Dowager lady asked Lowena to run an errand, take a vase of yellow roses to Rose's room. Lowena readily agrees, thinking it's good advice even if she doesn't fully understand it. Holding the vase, Lowena's eyes light up. She realizes this is the perfect timing and excuse she needed to investigate Rose's room. She had already planned to stop by Rose's room at House Hayworth, hoping to find a clue since this was the room Rose used before moving to Somerset. As she places the vase down, she's surprised to find an ornate golden key left sitting on the mantel. With the key in hand, she rushes back to the garden, excitedly calling out for the Dowager Lady. She holds up her discovery, eagerly asking the Dowager Lady if she happens to know anything about this key. The Dowager Lady explains it belongs in Rose's room, but she left it there, as she could never find a matching lock for it anywhere in the Hayworth mansion. A brilliant idea strikes Lowena. The Dowager Lady gives her permission, saying she can have it for good, since there's no matching lock anyway. Lowena clutches the key, filled with hope that she can finally open that mysterious drawer back at Somerset, believing the secret of Rose and Quentin is inside. Back at the Somerset estate, Dante finds Lowena kneeling by the locked drawer, clarifying that she called him here to open it together. Dante falls silent, his expression unreadable. Lowena immediately worries, wondering if this is still too difficult for him to face. She decides it would be better to open it alone later if it hurts Dante. She quickly changes her tune, saying it wouldn't be fun, and suggests they go play instead. Dante firmly rejects her offer to play, leaving Lowena completely surprised by his sudden change in demeanor. With a determined and pained expression, Dante clenches his fist, declaring that he wants to check. He needs to confirm for himself what kind of person his father truly was. Lowena hesitates, warning him there might be bad things about his father inside. Dante insists it's okay, stating he's prepared. He says he wants to know the truth, even if it reveals a side of his father he didn't know. Lowena sees his resolve and agrees. With his permission, Lowena asks one last time if he's sure, then inserts the key into the rose-shaped lock. The lock clicks open. They both lean forward with wide, anxious eyes to see what secrets the drawer holds. Inside the drawer, resting atop a stack of papers, is a single sealed letter with a red wax seal. The letter is addressed to Lady Rose Hayworth, and the elegant signature at the bottom reveals the sender is none other than Quentin, Dante's father, confirming a secret correspondence between the two. The chapter ends there. At his desk, Duke Seymour Hayworth Somerset ponders just how many times his name has changed. He recalls the first change was entirely his father's will, a deal made with the Marquise Hayworth. The Somerset family had 2 sons, while the Hayworth Marquisate had only a single daughter. Since his older brother would succeed their father, he was sent to the Hayworth family for a title. He now understands it was his father's way of securing a future for his second son. However, to his much younger self, the decision felt like something else entirely. It felt as if he was abandoned by his own family, an outsider sent somewhere new. The one person who finally helped him put down roots was the woman who proposed to him. She wanted to marry him for who he was, not because of some promise made by adults. Rose confesses that she genuinely wants to be with him, promising to become the place he can always return to, a true home he never had before. She promises to always stay by his side, ensuring that Hayworth could finally become a real home for him. With a brilliant, heartfelt smile that could light up the world, Rose finally asks him to marry her, cementing her place in his memory as his one true salvation. Back in the present, the Duke reflects on that pivotal moment, a memory still so vivid in his mind. He remembers her warmth, the hands that held him, and the playful voice that asked for his answer. Rose became his home and his entire reason for living. But that beautiful memory is now tainted by a horrifying thought, that the same Rose was hiding something so terrible behind his back, and with his own brother. His hands grip the evidence. Overwhelmed by grief and betrayal, he thinks he should have just followed her in death, blissfully unaware of the affair between her and his brother Quentin. His piercing green eyes betray a deep, hollow agony as he laments that if he had died with her, he wouldn't be suffering through this immense pain now. His dark spiral is suddenly interrupted as Lowina bursts through the door, reminding him it's already bedtime. She's shocked to find him still buried in work, even though it's already so late at night. She playfully orders him to clean up and get up from his desk, to which he tiredly agrees. She pulls him along, scolding him for nearly staying up all night again, while he mutters under his breath. A small smile touches his lips as he realizes she always seems to appear whenever he's feeling down. He admits that while her constant visits were annoying at first, he's somehow grown used to this new life with her, finding the change in himself quite ridiculous. She pats the bed enthusiastically, ushering him to lie down so she can begin their nightly routine. He warns her not to fall asleep while reading again, but she promises he'll really like tonight's story. Lying back, he muses that things would be perfect if she couldn't talk, but then admits to himself that the way she worries about him is actually quite admirable. As she excitedly tells him to close his eyes, he realizes this seemingly childish storybook time has become the only moment he can truly let go of his distracting thoughts. He closes his eyes as she begins to read, finding it strange how these obvious and boring tales are the only thing that can bring him a moment of peace. Lowena begins to read what she thinks is a storybook, starting with a formal address to Dear Madame Rose Hayworth. The Duke's eyes snap open in shock. The words aren't from a fairy tale, but a real letter apologizing for leaving Port Paladin without a proper goodbye. He sits up abruptly, completely bewildered as Lowena continues reading a line about the letter's writer having a debt. A sudden tension fills his expression as he realizes the letter's importance, asking Lowena to show it to him. With an innocent smile, completely unaware of the document's true nature, she happily holds out the letter to him. He takes the letter from her, his mind racing as he prepares to read the contents for himself. Sitting in bed, the Duke reads the shocking truth. His brother Quentin went to Port Paladin to borrow money from Marquis Talbot. His hand tightens on the page as he reads Quentin's words, explaining he was too ashamed to admit his failure as an older brother and ask Seymour for help. Quentin had asked Rose to keep his financial troubles a secret, thanking her for the funds she lent him to put out an urgent fire, confirming the source of the money. The letter ends with Quentin's expressed embarrassment over receiving help, and a chilling postscript. Seymour might find it difficult to receive the Somerset inheritance if things go wrong. Quentin urged Rose to have Seymour visit the Somerset estate soon, believing they needed to talk about the inheritance and ensure Seymour knew he was still part of the family. He even suggested that if Seymour couldn't come, her visit alone would suffice, promising to try his best to ensure Seymour received a fair share of the family's inheritance. His letter clearly expressed a genuine desire to be fair with the property between himself and his younger brother. He was certain their father would have wished for fairness as well, even if discussing inheritance might have seemed fussy. Quentin's true motivation was simply to let his younger brother know that he was qualified to inherit. Quentin felt he had failed as a brother, and wanted to at least handle this matter properly, expressing sadness that Seymour seemed to think he had no family left at all. He saw him as a child. The letter from Quentin Graham ended with a desperate plea for Rose to stay by Seymour's side, a role he felt he couldn't fulfill, and the Duke clutches it in anguish. Lowena watches from her chair as the Duke is overcome, his body trembling with choked, silent sob. She realizes with a pang of sorrow that the Duke can't even bring himself to cry, his reaction a mirror of the profound, silent grief she had witnessed in Dante. Her mind flashes back to when she and Dante read the letters together, a quiet moment of discovery that brought them both a profound sense of peace and understanding. She remembers telling Dante with a warm smile that his father was truly a good person. Tears streamed down Dante's face as he clutched the letters to his chest, finally able to agree with her, his voice choked with emotion as he affirmed his father's goodness. In the present, the Duke clutches the letters just as his son had, his body still trembling as his voice, thick with overwhelming gratitude. Thanks, Lowena, for uncovering the long-buried truth. She says thank you back to him, getting onto the bed to be closer to him in his moment of vulnerability. She gently wraps her small arms around his broad shoulders, offering him the simple, profound comfort of a hug as he continues to process the overwhelming wave of relief and sorrow. As she holds him, she recalls the original novel's plot, where this incident, this betrayal by those he loved most, was the catalyst that destined him to become a heartless villain. She reflects that due to her intervention, Jaden's manipulative plot was stopped early on. And now, Seymour's painful misunderstanding about Rose and Quentin has finally been completely cleared up. With everything now resolved, a hopeful thought crosses her mind as her eyes shine with determination. Has she finally, successfully prevented the Duke from becoming the villain he was meant to be? Lowena considers that the Seymour she's actually seen, while unstable after losing Rose, was never the truly bad person described in the original novel's dark narrative. She now hopes that with Seymour having regained his senses, he might simply advance the import date for the Lily disease cure, which would be a huge relief for her. As she holds the grieving Duke, a wave of relief washes over her, believing that, against all odds, everything has truly worked out for the best in the end, right? But a new darkness looms. Meanwhile, under the pale light of the moon, a mysterious figure quietly whispers Lowena's name into the night. Peeking from the shadows, a man with a chillingly intense gaze and a sinister aura repeats her full name, his voice laced with an unsettling and ominous obsession. A new threat has emerged from the darkness, setting the stage for the next harrowing chapter of her story. A few days later, the immediate emotional storm has passed, and a sense of normalcy returns to the duchy. The butler approaches Lowena, explaining that his grace has so much work, he must work overtime again today. He explains that since Jaden's imprisonment, the Duke has been handling all the cleanup and extra duties. The butler adds that the Duke specifically asked him to apologize for not being able to keep his promise, leaving Lowena in utter disbelief that he's too busy to see her. This news is especially worrying because she saw the spots from the Lily disease symptoms spreading earlier today. Although other symptoms haven't appeared, she doesn't know when it might progress rapidly, and she was planning to start leaking information so the Duke could find the medicine soon. But her entire plan is completely useless if she can't even meet with him to discuss it. As she frets, she overhears the butlers wondering if they should skip His Grace's birthday this year too. She's completely shocked by the revelation, exclaiming in disbelief as the butlers agree it would be difficult. One of the attendants explains that the birthday is less than 2 weeks away, but they couldn't celebrate last year because the atmosphere wasn't right, though he'd hoped to try this year. Lowena thinks a birthday is too important to just let it pass by, believing that would be far too lonely for the Duke. She's determined to take care of his birthday, realizing she can use this as the perfect excuse to finally meet with him. She bursts into Dante's room, who looks up from his book, completely exhausted by her sudden appearance. Standing dramatically in the doorway, she declares an emergency, announcing that it's almost the Duke's birthday. Dante is shocked, having heard nothing about it, but she insists that's precisely why they must take care of it. She excitedly proposes they prepare a special birthday party for him, confidently telling Dante to just follow her lead. A blushing Dante looks on, holding his book as he hesitantly asks her why she's going so far for his uncle. With a bright, beaming smile, she declares it's because they're family, and family members are supposed to look out for each other. She closes her eyes with a content smile, but there's another, more calculated reason behind her kind gesture. She secretly hopes that by doing this, the Duke will feel obligated to give her the cure later on. Her plan hinges on the Duke's affection. She believes that even just him worrying about her when she gets the Lily disease will be enough to motivate him to act. Later, while out in the city, Lowina orders a glutinous rice bread for a snack, while Dante declines. They sit together by a beautiful fountain as Lowina happily enjoys the delicious treat she just bought. She's pleased she persuaded Dante to come, since his status as a gram allows them to go out alone. While she enjoys her snack, Dante impatiently asks just how long they're going to have to stay here. He reminds her about the party for his uncle, suggesting they should go buy a gift for him. She agrees, brightly explaining that they are currently waiting for the perfect gift, the one the Duke needs most. Dante is completely bewildered by her cryptic answer, admitting that sometimes he just doesn't understand her at all. He asks if she has a gift in mind, wondering what they could possibly be waiting for here. She playfully tells him it's a secret, then pops a sweet in her mouth and practices a long name. Dante correctly guesses that she's preparing a special surprise gift for the Duke's birthday, which she cheerfully confirms. Dante insists she should at least give him a hint, but her attention is suddenly caught by a shout nearby. They both watch as 2 men walk past, one of them calling out to someone named Louis. She has found him. The man with red hair, Louis, confirms he's heading out first to go pick something up. Lowena leaps to her feet with a flash of inspiration, declaring that this man is the Duke's birthday gift. She's relieved he looks exactly like his description in the novel, confirming the rumors about him frequenting a nearby gambling den were true as he has finally appeared. This man is none other than the famous artist, Louis Castro, a key figure from the original story. He is the 3rd son of the Castro family, a house of famous artists, and is destined to bring a massive revolution to the accounting market in just 7 years. Louis Castro is the undisputed accounting genius of this era, but what's even more surprising is that until he entered the accounting field, he was known for something else entirely. He was the family's disgraced black sheep. After the Castro family's sudden downfall, Louis hurriedly got a job at Eden, the company run by the original story's male lead, Valentin. After starting at Eden, he discovered and applied a completely new calculation formula, which significantly increased the efficiency of their accounting work and changed the company's fortunes forever. Because of Louis's genius, Eden's business soared once again, widening the gap between them and Seymour's business. Lowena realizes that if Louis hasn't joined Valentin yet, he'll be a huge help to Seymour. As Louis parts ways with his companion, Lowena realizes with a jolt that she's about to lose him. She quickly grabs Dante's hand, insisting they can't lose him and must follow, much to his utter confusion. She admits she doesn't know him, but confidently states he's someone she'll get to know very soon. They begin to follow him. Dante nervously whispers that he thinks it's dangerous here, but Lowena quiets him, focused on their mission. He asks why they're following this person, and she whispers back that the man is the Duke's gift. As Louis stops to light a cigarette, Dante can't help but think that he looks like a shady guy. Dante grows increasingly nervous, remembering that the adults had warned him never to go into back alleys, especially since this one is filled with gambling dens and bars. He watches Louis shake hands with a rough-looking man, concluding that these must be the very criminals and bad people the adults always warned him about. His fear intensifies as he notes the other man's scary face, complete with scars and tattoos, worrying about what would happen if they were discovered to be nobles. His imagination runs wild with the terrifying possibility of them being targeted, kidnapped, and sold for money. Firm in his decision, Dante resolves that he must convince Lowina to turn back before they get into real trouble. Just as he's about to protest, Lowina cuts him off, excitedly pointing as Louis heads into a nearby building. She pulls him forward again. They burst through the doors. Inside, they find a smoky, dimly lit gambling den where several men are engrossed in a high-stakes card game. Surrounded by stacks of coins and playing cards, the intimidating atmosphere finally seems to get to her as she stammers. The men at the tables turn their attention to the children, their voices dripping with suspicion and annoyance. They question what kids are doing in a place like this, remarking on their nerve for daring to enter. Faced with the hostile glares of the gamblers, Lowena's confidence finally shatters, and she clings to Dante, admitting she's terrified. Trapped in a den of criminals, Lowena's brilliant plan has taken a dangerous turn, leaving them vulnerable and alone. The menacing atmosphere of the den finally breaks through Lowena's confidence, leaving both children trembling with fear. Lowena whispers in a panic, asking what they should do, while Dante reminds her he warned it was dangerous. She knows they can't just leave, but as they try to back away, their escape is suddenly cut off. A large man grabs them. In a panic, Lowena pleads for their release, claiming they taste terrible, while Dante apologizes for being there. Just then, a calm voice cuts through the chaos as a pair of boots steps into view. It's Louis Castro, the man they were following, who coolly acknowledges the two brats tailing him earlier. He calmly puts out his cigarette in an ashtray, addressing the children as Little Lord and Little Lady. Now seated before him, Louis gets straight to the point, asking why two noble kids are chasing after him. Louis correctly observes that it seems to be their first time in such a dangerous place before asking if they have any business with him. Lowena nervously explains that she came to find him after hearing some things, which prompts his curiosity. She switches tactics, brightly declaring that she heard he's a genius, which catches a clearly flattered Louis off guard. He feigns modesty, but Lowena playfully tells him not to play dumb, knowing exactly who he is. Pointing towards the other gamblers, she claims she overheard them saying he's never lost a single game here. She enthusiastically concludes that this makes him a genius, and Louis, unable to suppress a smug smile, tries to brush it off. He downplays his talent, but Lowena's effusive praise reassures her that her strategy of compliment bombing is working perfectly. Confident that she can win him over with flattery, she sweetly asks for a favor from the quote-quote genius big brother. Clearly enjoying the attention, Louis preens for a moment before smoothly agreeing to at least hear her out. With a hopeful and sparkling expression, she cuts to the chase and directly asks if he will come work at her house. Her brilliant plan comes crashing down as they are unceremoniously thrown out, her offer completely and utterly rejected. She tries to save face, telling herself she didn't expect him to accept right away, but she's clearly frustrated he refused so flatly. To make matters worse, Louis ordered the guard to throw them out and ensure no children ever got near the place again, leaving her completely stumped on what to do next. She realizes that if the Castro family falls, Louis will join Valentin, the Somerset finances will hit rock bottom, and her own cure will be delayed indefinitely, sealing her fate. Her death is confirmed. She spirals into despair after all the trouble she went through just to get here, only to fail. Dante tries to reason with her, suggesting they give up on the unfriendly man and just buy a real birthday present instead. He suggests a piece of art, something small their pocket money could afford, but the word art triggers something in Lowena. She grabs him excitedly. A brilliant new idea flashes in her mind as she realizes why she didn't think of it before. If she can't meet Louis, she'll just have to go visit him directly. Her new plan is bold and direct. They're going straight to the magnificent Castro mansion to find him. Upon arriving, Lowena is immediately captivated by the beautiful statues and fountains adorning the estate's grounds. Walking through the gardens, she notes it's a famous artist family and asks Dante if he's visited before. Dante explains it's his first time visiting without adults, but their families have exchanges, which is why they were allowed in on such short notice, because he is a Graham. A maid grants them entry, and Lowena internally celebrates, knowing that bringing Dante was a very good idea. The moment she steps inside, she's completely awestruck by the sheer opulence and beauty of the mansion's interior. Standing in the grand foyer, she marvels that the mansion looks just like a magnificent art exhibition hall. They are greeted by an elegant woman with red hair, who confirms they are the visitors from the Graham family. She introduces herself with a graceful smile as Diana Castro, the second daughter of the esteemed Castro family. After Dante and Lowena introduce themselves, Diana has a moment of recognition, realizing Lowena is the model for the famous White Rose painting. Diana explains the artist was her uncle's student, making the painting a hot topic. Lowena finds it fascinating that someone recognizes her. Diana confirms they wanted to see some art pieces, and graciously offers to guide them through the mansion's collection. As they tour the gallery, Diana gestures to a collection of elegant statues, proudly noting that she sculpted these herself. She then points to a wall of beautifully framed paintings, explaining that those are the works of her older brother, Lucas. Diana recalls their purpose for visiting, asking if they were indeed looking for a gift for the Duke of Somerset. Lowena confirms this is correct, and eagerly tells Lady Diana that she has a question she'd like to ask. Lowena points out that she heard the Castro family has 3 siblings, but they've only seen works from Diana and Lucas. Diana's expression saddens as she explains that her other brother, Louis, does not create any art at all. When asked why, Diana looks away, her expression clouded with a mix of disappointment and confusion as she admits that she honestly doesn't know the reason herself. She laments that as a Castro, he should naturally learn art as a source of pride and duty, but instead he just wanders around outside simply because he's a noble. Diana turns away, admitting that, although she hates to say it as his sibling, she considers him an embarrassment. Diana says some fates are so unfortunate even God turns away, making Lowena realize how Louis was always treated at home. Lowena recalls her attempt to recruit him, when she assured him they weren't suspicious and came from the esteemed Somerset family. She remembers his dismissive response, as he told her to forget it, claiming he simply doesn't fit in with nobles. The pieces suddenly click into place for Lowena. His words and his family's disdain make it perfectly clear why Louis is always wandering around outside, away from his home. Diana is surprised she's decided already, but graciously invites her to share what she has chosen for the Duke's gift. With a confident, closed-eye smile, Lowena announces her choice for a gift is none other than Louis Castro himself. She clarifies her audacious request, stating plainly that she wants to buy this family's Louis Castro. The man in question, Louis Castro, stands amidst a garden of vibrant red roses, his expression unreadable, as he remains completely unaware of the bold transaction being proposed inside his own home. Lowena's shocking proposal hangs in the air, a bold move that could solve all her problems, or create even bigger ones.